I don't know. I mean, Nance doesn't have socials to share it out on, so I'm just gonna share it to you, Mikey.
Posting on Reddit.
Okay, I'll send it to you.
That means I have to log into Reddit.
You're not logged into Reddit.
Mm-mm.
Oh my god, dude. How is my internet so fast but taking so long? I don't.
It's your
All
computer
right,
taking so
I
long.
sent I sent the link to you, Mikey. I think it is the computer. It's not the internet. Going live now, bitches. Okay. Sent that to you. Wow, I wish I could just share the link in the chat.
Yeah, dude. What the?
Like, yeah, we've been locked out of being able to use Zoom chat for a while.
Why? What happened?
I disabled it at one point, and now I can't find in the settings where I can re-enable it, because when I go to all the places where it says to do it, it actually says that I already did re-enable it, but it's not, because if you try to use it right now, it's not there. And there's like 6 places with fucking chat. Dude, Dance tried to figure it out today, and he got super lost in the Zoom settings. I got super lost in the Zoom settings. I haven't come back from being lost in the Zoom settings, in fact. I'm still out there. You want to know where I've been? All right. I'm going to start the stream. 3, 2, 1. We might want to have a backup recording. My cloud on the Zoom side is full. Nance, that's on you if you want.
Yep, it's going.
All right. 3, 2. Come on, come on. Okay. It's officially live, but we're not live yet, so we're still. We'll wait a second for the people to get in here to make sure it's showing up. Going live to. Should I tag Nick Land on Twitter?
What do you mean tag him?
You know, like, so that he sees it.
Oh, what, on Twitter? I mean, sure, why not?
What's his
Outsideness.
What's his handle on there? Oh yeah. All right, you guys about ready?
Sure, why not?
Why the fuck not? We'll see. We'll see what happens. I might just turn off my camera because this shit's lagging so bad. There's no way. Dude, my internet being so bad though, like it actually seems like it might be. I don't know. I'm gonna run a speed test. Is it?
It's buffering on
Let's
YouTube.
see. Seems fine from my side.
Okay, yeah, it's not now.
Jeez. Glad I'm paying $80 a month for this. For low system resources may affect your audio quality. Try closing some applications to improve performance. That's what Zoom is suggesting.
Because it's back to buffering on.
All right, let's just do it. So, what's up, everybody? What's up? Test, test, test. Hello?
Yo,
You guys should talk. Say something.
what's up?
Yeah, what's up?
Okay. I was worried the audio. There we go. I was worried the audio wasn't coming through. Everyone, my computer's breaking. I think you might be able to see it on the screen right there. It says, low system resources may affect your audio quality. Try closing some applications to improve performance. So I'm going to first start by dropping my video altogether. Fuck it. Who needs to see me? Nobody. Nobody needs that. So let's get into it. What are we about to read here, guys?
We're going to discuss Nick Land's essay called Critique of Transcendental Miserablism, which is his infamous critique of the left, the current left, at least.
Okay.
On a technical
Let's do
note,
it.
Dave, it doesn't even...
Anything
Yeah,
you... What?
On a technical note, like I'm looking at YouTube,
What?
it's still just like the thumbnail.
Yeah, well, there's like a 15-second lag. We've talked about this. I've told you this for years.
Okay, well, just saying it's acting weird.
You
More so
don't
than
look
you-
at it. It is bad. It's really, really fucking bad. I don't know, but we're just gonna work with it. Yeah, people on the YouTube live site, go ahead and let us know if you can see or hear anything. Like, we'd love to know.
Make sure, because I'm iffy about whether or not they're hearing or seeing anything right now.
Well, we can wait. We can wait until we have confirmation that someone. It says there's 6 people there. If you're there, folks, let us know that you're there.
Oh, Martin Heidegger.
Okay. Martin
Heidegger
Heidegger
says-
said, "I hear you, man."
Cool. Thanks, Martin.
Yeah, Martin, how's the video quality? Is it buffering or is it working for you?
Guarantee it's buffering, because if it's buffering for me, it's buffering for them. Don't worry about video. Turn your video off if you don't like it. But let's get into it.
All right. Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I just want either of you guys to say anything you want to say as a preface or whatever. But I mean, if it's a critique of the left from Nick Land's standpoint, if that's fine, then let's go.
Okay. I guess the best thing to do to get into this, let's just read the first paragraph and then we'll talk about what's going on here, because some context needs to be set with this particular paragraph. Somebody want to read it?
Yeah, I'll 1 second.
Okay. Yeah. So, folks, while Nance gets sets up, I'm just going to say something. If you hear that noise in the background, just know that I spent the better part of 45 minutes today trying to eliminate that noise, which is obviously not the ideal solution. The better solution would be to fix the fan in the laptop that is making that noise. But the fan is in the mail. It'll be a couple days until I have that. The other solution is to have the my desktop fixed. And my desktop has been broken, and I've been trying to fix it. Drives and wires are all over the ground around me. I just got back from Best Buy. I got a replacement drive, but whatever. It's all in disrepair. This is as good as you're going to get it for now. Hopefully, things will be a lot better very soon.
And with all that said, we will get into it. There is a gathering trend among neo-Marxists to finally bury all aspiration to positive economism, freeing the forces of production from capitalist relations of production, and install a limitless cosmic despair in its place. Who still remembers Khrushchev's threat to the semi-capitalist West? We will bury you. Or Mao's promise that the Great Leap Forward would ensure the Chinese economy leapt past that of the UK within 15 years. The Frankfurtian spirit now rules. Admit that capitalism will outperform its competitors under almost any imaginable circumstances, while turning that very admission into a new kind of curse. We never wanted growth anyway. It just spells alienation. Besides, haven't you heard that the polar bears are drowning?
That's a good last sentence. Okay, so yeah, there's what's going on here. Well, what you just read is the version of this essay that's contained in Fanged Noumena, which is the collection of Land's most important, influential writings from the 1990s. This is kind of the famous peak of Land's philosophical career. At least these are the essays that he's most known for. This one he wrote later. I think it was originally released in 2007. And this version of it, it starts off, there is a gathering trend among neo-Marxists, blah, 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 right? But originally this was a blog post. This wasn't just a standalone essay. And the first version of it on his blog, I think it was the Hyperstition blog, started off like this. This post at K-Punk epitomizes a gathering trend among neo-Marxists to finally bear. Okay, so he's talking about a post at K-Punk. Well, that's Mark Fisher's blog. And so this essay or blog post is responding to one of Mark Fisher's or K-Punk's blog posts. And that one was called The Damage is Done. And so in that piece, Mark Fisher is basically like, he's depressively arguing that it is now virtually impossible to imagine alternate futures, right? I don't think he uses the term capitalist realism there, but that's what he's basically kind of despairing over, is that we can't even imagine any post-capitalist futures anymore. And so what he's getting at here, Land, is that the problem for the left is that they've, at this point, basically abandoned any hopes to revolutionize the economy. They've shifted to, now Land doesn't say it, but they've shifted to identity politics or various other projects, and they've left behind any large-scale hope in restructuring the economy. And so when he talks about positive economism, that's what he's getting at, is the old leftist goal of bringing about a socialist mode of production, right? Getting past the capitalist mode of production. And he thinks that, and what he's going to argue here is the reason that the left is so depressed, which we'll get to what miserablism is about in a second, but why it's so depressed and why it's so despairing, which, I mean, we know that's the position from which Fisher was writing, was one of Great Depression. Land thinks that it's because the left has given up all hopes on positive economism, which is, again, the project of bringing about a socialist mode of production, bringing about a revolution in society based on unleashing new technology, new forces of production. And he thinks that once the Marxists have abandoned that, then it's all downhill from there for them. And this means
Cool.
that the whole of critique of transcendental miserablism is really a response to Fisher and his concept of capitalist realism. You guys want to add anything before I go on here?
The technical note is the internet's fine, guys. All of the issues you're seeing are apparently computer issues because I ran an internet speed test and shit looks great actually. So, nah, man, it's a piece of shit laptop. This was supposed to be a huge upgrade, but it has a major issue. The CPU is being underclocked because of this fan issue. So, we'll make do with what we got. Uh, as I said in the chat, it's a podcast. And then, guys, if you hate the buffering, you can just pause it, go do other shit, come back, listen to it later, or you like skip back and then play forward faster, or just play forward at a normal speed if you don't like the buffering. Whatever. Anyway, that's just my idea. But yeah, I could see why he would call Fisher transcendental miserablism, but or at least miserablism. But what makes it transcendental? I know that's like a dirty word for delusions because they like things being imminent. So, what is that?
Okay, so I don't want to just like read this off, so I'm going to read something and then take a breath or whatever, and we can discuss it as we go. But I did write some commentary, especially on this opening paragraph, and because there's a lot to explain, like the question you just asked. So, Land sees the left's abandonment of positive economism, which is the liberation of the forces of production from their capitalist social relations. This is this famous dialectic, right? Like at some point, technological advancement is going to get to the point that we can't maintain these capitalist relations, capitalists and proletariat or capitalists and wage labor. These relationships, these social relationships of production are going to be surpassed by the movement, the development of the means of production, the forces of production. And so the idea in classical Marxism with certain Marxists is that technological development brought on by capitalism is itself going to bring about the end of capitalism as we know it, break down this whole class struggle thing between capitalists and wage laborers. And so that's but this project is something the left has given up on, at least when he's writing it. And so that's the issue he's getting at. Like this is why Fisher and other leftists are so depressed. Okay, we kind of have said that already. In other words, for Land, leftists are the true pessimists, not accelerationists. Now that's right. That's an interesting thing because if you know Land's philosophy at all, which I mean, that's the whole point of the course I'm going to be teaching is to introduce the basics of it. But suffice it to say that if you're familiar with what Land thinks capitalism's eventually going to do, it's very easy to go, no, Land's the pessimist. But from his perspective, he doesn't actually view himself as a pessimist. He would view himself in a kind of Nietzschean light of amor fati or the overman, which is not afraid of death, not afraid of risk or anything that could possibly do harm. There's a sense in which the overman overcomes these basic fears and it affirms life even with its suffering, right? Whatever that suffering be. And so from Land's perspective, he's the one who's saying, let's just joyously embrace where capital takes us instead of despairing over the fact we can't get out of capitalism and capitalism alienates us and all this. So now many of us would argue with this assessment of the situation, but that's how Land is thinking here, is that the true pessimists now are the Marxists, the what he calls here the leftists are the pessimists, accelerationists are, I don't know if optimists is the right term, but
The realist, I think he would say.
the realists, or even the life affirmationists, I think he would even say. This is true even if Land's type of accelerationism inevitably leads to human extinction, which that's what Land has always thought, is that capitalism through its technological advancements will surpass human beings in one way or another, will go extinct. And it's very easy to go, well, how is that not the pessimism? But he just views it as, species exist, then they go extinct. That's part of what life is on Earth. And so for him, he thinks staving off death, staving off existence forever, is actually the position of resentment or despair. And it's more, the accelerationist logic is like, fuck it, let's go full throttle in what's already inevitable, right? And again, people will agree or disagree with it.
To me, that's like almost a therapeutic, or like you could say it's copology or whatever, but it's like it's a way of reining in your expectations, because like if the goals and dreams of the early, I keep hearing myself in the background. It's fucking weird, man. It's like, what is that? But anyway, if the goals and dreams of the old left came out of a time of like techno positivism and sky's the limit, the issue is that when you have expectations for some kind of like something that's unrealistic, yeah, you're going to be miserable. And so it's like, one way of dealing with that is to just have really low expectations, or to find a way to love whatever's already, right? And so, of course, that's a form of conservatism, blah, blah, blah. People might not like it, but at a basic level, though, yeah, it is a way of dealing with a shitty situation.
Yeah, and I want to get to this last part because I think what you're saying will have more weight even once we work through this next part. So yeah, Land notes that both Khrushchev and Mao, two of the most important communist, leftist, Marxist figures of the 20th century, were dead set on unleashing the forces of production. They were passionately committed to a revolutionary step forward in technological advancements related directly to the economic infrastructure. So he's saying that part of the optimism, the strengthness in spirit of old communism was precisely because they had this vision of being able to introduce the radically new via technology, and that this core project is what gave it its spirit of progressivism, and that to abandon the future, to abandon a revolutionary new future that is revolutionarily new at the structural level of the economy, that's where if you don't have that, after having that be the default setting, then everything else just kind of doesn't do the trick. And so he thinks that the abandonment of this project is really what's led to the downfall of the left. And I think all of us in some way agree with that shifting away from focusing on revolutionizing or restructuring the economy is, I don't know what you would say on this one, Dave, but I think it's one of the big downfalls, at least of the left.
Well, an insufficient theory of what makes us, what makes life worth living, and what a plausible and preferable future could be, and instead just living in reaction against fascism and liberalism is a obvious dead end, and it's like a defensive holding position that originates or has its basis in a bygone era, right? And so it's just like, yeah, 100%.
I mean, look, if that was the core project of the emancipatory Marxist left, then he talks about later on, we'll get to it, but he says basically the left is just, now it's nothing but a no. It's like what you're saying, a no to capitalism, a no to fascism, a no to liberalism, a no to nationalism. And if your project is just saying no to everything else, that's why it's hard to sell a lot of people on it, is because if it's not really presenting a positive vision for the future, I mean, that's what Marxist leftism really did, right? On a large worldwide scale. If you abandon that for whatever reasons, I mean, look, I think the reasons are what happened, the trajectory of the Soviet Union, the trajectory of China and Cuba and all, right? Okay. So the history of actually existing socialism, there's a reason why. It's not like leftists just abandoned this out of nowhere. I mean, there were reasons why they felt like they couldn't stick with this narrative, stick with this vision forever. But the fallout of abandoning it may be far worse than if they had tried to stick it out. And so, okay. However, the neo-Marxists are left with nothing but Frankfurtian depression now that they have given up on this economistic project. The Frankfurtian spirit says, because I'm basically trying to reword his point here, capitalism has won and will always beat every other mode of production. But we can never enthusiastically embrace capital, since it existentially and socially alienates us and fuels the climate change that destroys the environment. The polar bears are melting and there's nothing we can do about it. This terrible truth leaves the leftists, or neo-Marxists, trapped inside of transcendental miserablism. Now, before I'm going to explain that term as we go on, but want to add anything, guys, before we talk about the term itself? I mean, you kind of feel that about this Frankfurtian spirit, where you admit that capitalism will beat out any of its alternatives or any of its competitors, and yet, even though it's going to beat them out, it means a kind of existential alienation. And I mean, I guess stupid-minded consumerism would be another part of it. But it leaves us hollow, so to speak, when it comes to our lives. And so we admit capitalism's it's always going to beat the other, but capitalism's a shitty option. So if we accept that as like this fundamental axiom or fundamental truth, then what are we left with as far as what we're trying to do politically?
Yeah, it's like capitalist realism and the end of history had an illegitimate baby, and we're celebrating that baby. Like, yeah, it sucks.
Yeah, and politics of recognition, representation, and redistribution, which was it was representation, recognition versus redistribution, right? Like that was the arguments Nancy Fraser and all these people were involved in 70s and 80s, that whole setup, all three, we would go, yeah, redistribution first, fuck representation, recognition, sure, it's important, but obviously redistribution is the most important. But the thing is all three of those assume capitalism and work within capitalism. And then it just becomes an argument over neoliberalism versus social democracy. So yeah, it's a complete dead end, and it's moving around seats on the Titanic. And this is why it's like, at a certain point, like, we almost can't connect well with people who aren't burnt out Marxists, because it's like you have to have seen hope, but you also hope with the realization that capital is like better than what came before it, but also like real bad, right? And with that, but then when you realize that the old hope is gone, but the same diagnosis is basically in place, it's like, well, then what? And so it's just like, this is why reading Gore's like got us all excited. It's like, well, here we go. This is like someone who kind of comes from that background, sees the problem, gets it at a level that's better than a lot of actually existing current Marxists, and is not going to just give up, but he's also, yeah, he's not going to just keep copying and pasting old categories onto the current situation and saying that we just need to double down in our faith, double down in our prayers, essentially, which is what it sounds like to me when people start using words like solidarity. We just need more solidarity. We just need more organizing. That's the solution. It's like, okay, but we need a new vision forward, and no one's got one. Well, that's why we got excited with Gore's, because he does kind of posit one, which is probably why why there's this conspiracy of silence against him, And so people stay tuned. Nance and I read the entirety of his Farewell to the Working Class. That'll be going up on the channel in the next couple days. And then we've got a conversation, almost debate, sort of. We're definitely fleshing out a disagreement with Daniel Tutt that will be going up on the channel in a couple days after the reading. Would have already been up if my computer wasn't broken right now. But anyway, yeah. I'm just saying, I don't know that a person who's not really tarried with capital as the problem can really understand the depths of this kind of burnout or pessimism, or the kind of...
Because the three of us feel this. This is something we all three live with.
Yeah, well, yeah, we all feel it. I don't think that that's where we stay all the time, and that we definitely...
No, because we're theorizing other pathways, other visions.
Right.
But this feeling that we're describing that led us to be in this position to even try to think something like this.
Right. Yeah.
And what you were saying, I mean, I think like what you were saying with Gore's is absolutely true, but I also think that's Nick Cernacek and Alex Williams' book, Inventing the Future. It was a really popular book when it came out. And I think for the very same reason we like Gore's, which is it's not afraid of trying to envision a new, robust leftist project, right?
Right.
There was that quote I actually sent. I'm going to read it right now from Reza Negarestani. For those who don't know, this is a former member of the CCRU, along with Land and Mark Fisher and Sadie Plant. And this is from Reza's really influential essay, The Labor of the Inhuman, which is in the Accelerationist Reader. Reza says, indeed, it is commendable. Indeed, in its commendable attempt to outline what ought to be done in terms of functional organizations, complex hierarchies, and positive feedback loops of autonomy, Cernacek and Williams accelerate, which is their accelerationist manifesto, which got turned into Inventing the Future, signifies a Marxian project that is in the process of updating its commitments. It should come as no surprise that such an endeavor receives the most derision and scorn from those strains of Marxism which have long since given up on updating their cognitive and practical commitments.
Hey.
Kind of like when you and us start talking about Timenergy, right? With certain Marxists, at least. They don't.
Yeah. That's just late. That's just labor time.
Mm-hmm. Because
okay.
I mean, it's as if there's certain Marxists that can't stand the thought of any of us leftists or post-leftists, whatever, updating our commitments, right? which is to say re-theorizing the situation or the road forwards. And I think Reza really,
by theorizing the moment, like it's not letting go of anything. It's a taking in of actually existing conditions. That's the thing. Like, I think people are
like Marx
afraid.
did.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, like Marx did.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about this term transcendental miserablism, right? Strange term, but I'll just say up front. So the first part of it is a very technical term. The second one is just the colloquial usage of the word. So let's examine each term in isolation, and then we'll recombine them, and then we'll figure out what it means. So the word transcendental is being used here in its Kantian technical sense. For Kant, the transcendental refers to the conditions of experience, which is to say, the formal structures of experience as such. The transcendental refers to the basic matrix or constitutive program that makes experience possible. So we're not talking about actual experiences. We're talking about the very structures of experience as such. And I know that it's still weird to me that he decided to opt for transcendental to be the term he used for the conditions of possible experience, but that's what he went with. So, I mean, we can also talk about it as, you know, we have the content of a book, but we also have the form of a book. This is the McLuhanite insight into media, that media always has a content, but it also has a form. And the forms very, very much determine the content. So, you know, a basic example I like to use when talking about McLuhan is that the three words, I love you, right? That's the content. And so say you're in a relationship, neither one of you have said, I love you to the person that you're in love with, but you're ready to say the big three words, right? Here's the thing. There's a world of difference between saying them through speech or writing them on Facebook. But the strange things, right, is it's the same three words. So in one abstract sense, the content is the exact same. But the very fact that depending on what medium you send it through has drastically different effects, the meaning's not the same. The content isn't the same. And so this is this great insight that Marshall McLuhan had. Well, Kant is thinking about the importance of form, but I would even argue at a more foundational level, because he wants to talk about what is the structure or form of experience as such. And that's what, again, the conditions of experience is what he is referring to with the term transcendental. So Kant argued in favor of transcendental idealism, which is a position that holds that the mind itself, the human cognitive faculty, is actually the source of all of the fundamental forms, conditions, and structures of human experience. Now, this is a huge move in the history of philosophy, maybe the most epic reversal or development in the history of philosophy. Prior to Kant, I mean, we're talking, you go back to pre-Socratics up through Plato, Aristotle, Augustine, Aquinas, the scholastics, all that. They all kind of presupposed that the mind passively received experience, that the mind was kind of just an open space for the world to show itself, right? And that we weren't playing any active constitutive role in structuring experience. Kant's the first one that says, what if all of these fundamental philosophical categories like causality, substance, unity, multiplicity, what if all of these are processing programs? Like they process sense data and then shape it into the experience we have of the world. And so that's what the Copernican revolution in philosophy that Kant enacted is, this reversal, that the human mind plays a fundamentally active role in shaping experience. And not even just with the concepts of substance, which is thingness, right? We presuppose that things continue to exist even when we're not experiencing them. We all know the basics of causality. The billiard ball hits the other ball and it causes it to move, and etc. Right? We all have these basic concepts in our head. But Kant even thinks that time and space, now this is the big claim, right? That time and space are imposed on sense data by us, and that our very forms of sensibility, which is to say our perceptual system, our bodies have various senses that are geared towards experiencing the world, perceiving the world. He thinks that our sensory apparatus imposes temporal and spatial order on sense data. And so, in a sense, time and space are, there's something we're doing. Time and space don't apply to things in themselves, what he calls noumenon, or noumena is the plural. They only apply to phenomena, which is the things that we experience. That is, the things that we are actively structuring, the things that we are actively shaping. Now, he says transcendental idealism, because it's not an absolute idealism or a traditional idealism. He's not saying everything's mind. Obviously, if we're getting sense data given to our sensory apparatus, it's because there's things outside of us that are providing it. So he does think there are things outside of us. He just thinks that we don't have access to them because our mind has gone about, and we all universally have these same structures. And so the world we experience is a kind of intersubjective, or we could even say transsubjective. And in its transsubjectivity, it's also universally consistent. Our minds are all ordering it the same way. So we can talk about phenomenal reality because all of us have a consistent way of processing sense data. And so this is what Kant is getting at with his notion of the transcendental. And prior to Kant, no philosopher had really figured out there was this domain of how we, or I should say our minds, are actively participating in the construction of experience. And for Kant, I don't want to go, this take us too far off track, but he thinks he can solve all kinds of problems that were circulating in science and philosophy at the time. So Hume has this famous problem of causality. There's the whole debate over the nature of space with Newton and Leibniz. And Kant thinks he can come in with this insight into the transcendental and solve all of these apparently insolvable problems in philosophy. And so this is why Kant is such an immense, towering figure, and a lot of if you did a kind of vote among philosophers, I think even to this day, the majority of people educated in philosophy would collectively vote that Kant is arguably the greatest philosopher that ever lived. And it is because of this discovery of the transcendental. And when we get into the course, I'm going to take this and flesh out this concept of the transcendental and the noumenon, precisely because it's so important for Land. Now, Land, he almost, I would say, like, has a love-hate relationship with Kant, insofar as this distinction between phenomena and noumena is the absolute most important distinction for Land in his ontology. He also has all kinds of criticisms of Kant. So even though he embraces this basic distinction, he's going to depart from Kant in a number of ways. But the whole reason, his Twitter handle, Outsideness, right? He's talking about noumena. His famous collection of essays, Fanged Noumena, which is to say the fanged thing in itself, the fanged thing that we don't have immediate access to, but is there nonetheless. And for him, it's fanged because it poses a threat to us. But I'll get into that in the course. Let me see, just maybe I'll say what I've already said, just reword it a little bit because I've got the notes here. Just be sure. Okay. So the mind is what gives an a priori or pre-experiential form to our very experience of the world. Our transcendental faculty is what actively imposes temporal, spatial, and causal order on all of the data we receive through our senses. Kant was the first philosopher in history to truly think about how the mind itself actively is shaping the experiences we have of things. all of our experiences are necessarily temporal, spatial, causal, etc., precisely because these are the universal or transcendental structures of all of our minds that function to organize sense data. Okay, I'll pause on transcendental and then we'll talk about the miserablism thing. Anything?
I'm following along.
Okay. You want me
I
to just
think
keep
everybody
going?
else is too. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, let's just
Yeah,
keep
I
going.
mean, transcendental, another way of thinking about it is just, I mean, this is, I don't know if this is simplifying I think it gets at something. I'll just say that when Land is talking about the transcendental, it does help to have the idea of a default setting in your mind that, it's not a neutral default setting. So transcendental, the conditions of, right? So if we have certain conditions of experience, the ones Kant has in mind are these very universal ones. But what Land is about to do with the miserablism thing, it's a little bit more specific while still using this kind of Kantian notion of like the default perspective we have of the world, right? It might not be as fully transcendental as, say, the concept of causality or substance or whatever, but what Land is going to do is he's going to use the term transcendental to talk about someone's experiential default setting, right? And I think that's a helpful way of understanding what we're about to look at. So, okay. All right. So, but what is Land doing with his usage of the term transcendental in this context? He's saying that the neo-Marxist left now has a new default setting, a new transcendental form when it comes to all of its experiences of the world. In other words, he's saying that the left has a basic filter or lens through which it experiences all events and all situations. That default perspective is miserablism. This second term is not being used in some highly technical or specialist sense. That is, it's not a piece of philosophical or Kantian jargon. Miserablism simply means the enjoyment of one's own depression. We can say that miserablism involves enjoying one's own pessimism. If one grants, like the Frankfurt School, that capitalism is really the only option, but also that this sole option is absolutely terrible, then this locks one into a transcendental miserablism in one's default setting. Why? Because it's such a fundamental judgment of things or of our situation that it turns into the very default perspective from which we experience and evaluate all things, events, and situations. The Landian point here is that the left now gets off on, enjoys in the Lacanian sense, seeing everything through a depressive transcendental lens precisely because it's the left's great failure, the abandonment of the project of revolutionizing the economy. In positioning the left as transcendental miserabilists, Land is indirectly positioning the accelerationists, and now the neo-reactionaries, as transcendental joyists. I use this term, it's not his, but I'm trying to think what's the best way to oppose miserabilists. I guess it would be a Nietzschean joyist. And so the transcendental joyist, as I'm calling them, is the person who eagerly anticipates whatever the capitalist future holds.
Can we just say that they're gay? It's the,
What?
it's the
What?
it's the gay science.
Oh,
Yeah.
the transcendental gayist.
The imminent gays. I think that's what he wants to be. Is he's one of the imminent gays. Yeah.
Wow. So, but okay, that's what he's getting at here is that the left enjoy. I mean, part of me thinks Todd would like this insight, right? This enjoyment of its own default pessimism towards anything, right? And so no matter what happens, no matter what new idea somebody comes up with, this transcendental miserableness is going to shoot it down and unconsciously enjoy doing so.
I think he's talking about neo-Marxist. Someone in the chat was like, what's a neo-Marxist? And I was like, neo means new. So, but he's talking about Mark Fisher and stuff. But I would say that this goes beyond Mark Fisher and that sort of.
It does.
Right. No, so you could expand this out to the left in general as a brand. Its brand is, especially in the era of consumerism, being the boutique consumer identity whose form of enjoyment is picking apart every other boutique consumer identity's form of enjoyment, right? And so it's like, oh, I like this movie. Oh, you liked that movie, did you? Oh, I love this band. Oh, you like that band, do you? And it's like, well, even if I like that band, I liked that band before you did, and now they suck, right? It's always this hipster thing. It's always kind of this pessimistic sneer. And so, yeah,
think about, you can do young people who get real into leftist theory, right? Oh, I just read Guy Debord's Society of the Spectacle. It explains so much to me. And oh, really? Oh, well, here's the problem with that. Or, oh, I just learned about what Baudrillard says about symbolic exchange and how it's at odds with the capitalist form of that. Well, you know what the problem with that is? Like, it's just like, fuck. Like, you can't let them have.
Well, the funny thing about that is, sorry, we got that super bad joke going the whole tour. Funny thing about my back is, it's on my cock. And got Oh, I just heard her say something from downstairs.
Did
She's
she
so
say
over
dick
that
jar?
joke. Yeah, dick jar. We have to put money in the dick jar every time we do this. But I showed her Superbad last night. So
is it her first time?
Yeah, we fell asleep at some point, but she saw that part. So yeah. Funny thing about that thing you're reading is,
well, I mean, we just ran into it multiple times on the tour, since you brought it up, where we're on a panel and we're trying to seriously engage with our conversations with what we have going on, and the older people that were there were like, well, you kids just sit back and let me explain it all to you. Let me tell you a story.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh, I already know where you're coming from, what you're up to, and all the problems with it, even though I didn't take any notes the whole time you were talking, and I've not read anything that you've actually written down, and I've never actually followed anything you're doing. Let me give you a history lesson about why you're wrong. And it's like, okay, guys, we're trying to have a conversation here. But all right.
Well, and yeah, I guess that's part of, Land would, and they would absolutely, it's bad enough, the idea of what he's getting at. It's even worse that it's coming from him for them. But the fact, so kill any joy in young thinkers thinking. Great revolutionary praxis there.
Yeah, it's just a bunch of old guys yelling, "Get off my lawn." How the fuck are you going to plant a garden where 1,000 flowers bloom, where you tell everyone to get out of your fucking garden? Anyway.
Because it's not about thinking, man. It's about, you're not saying the words they like to hear enough.
Right.
So, yeah, you say hyperstition and that's not in my vocabulary. I don't like that word. What about OJR? No, I don't, Body without organ.
I don't remember that I don't remember that word in Capital Volume 1. Therefore, that word is idealism.
Timenergy, boo! So, okay. All right, so we've gotten through one paragraph. Who wants to read the next one? The good news, everybody, is that there's only 7 paragraphs. So, and this first thing was laying out the context and talking about the term. We can go faster from here.
I'll read this next paragraph so that I can get back to sorting out wires on the ground here, everybody. If you can see my place here. This place will eventually be my office, but for right now it's just a mess as I get organized. Let's read from Baudelaire's Le Voyage, with its mournful discovery that human vice repeated itself universally in even the most exotic locations. To the left-wing reading of Philip K. Dick as a Gnostic denunciation of commercialized change, capitalistic variety and innovation has been totalized as difference without essential difference, just more of the same senseless dissimilarity. It's like when Nance says it's all just paper clips. The grand master of this move is Arthur Schopenhauer, who lent it explicit philosophical rigor as a mode of transcendental apprehension. Since time is the source of our distress, Philip K. Dick's Black Iron Prison, how can any kind of evolution be expected to save us? Thus, transcendental miserablism constitutes itself as an impregnable mode of negation. It goes without saying that no substantial residue of Marxian historicism remains in the communist version of this posture. In fact, with economics and history comprehensively abandoned, all that survives of Marx is a psychological bundle of resentments and disgruntlements, reducible to the word capitalism in its vague and negative employment as a name for everything that hurts, taunts, and disappoints. And I would say, in a sense, you could almost for the ones who say capitalism are the ones who at least got that pill, but you could swap that out with settler colonialism. You could swap that out with white supremacy. You could swap that out with
General
patriarchy. Some master signifier functioning to quilt all of the general dishappiness in life. And one of the things I was thinking on my drive over here was about how, yeah, it really is like a form of disavowed misanthropy, a hatred of humankind that pivots to saying, well, I just hate humans right now. Right? I have hope for humans. If humans could just get enough education, then I could love them. If humans could just have enough time, energy, then I could love them. If humans were just a little less like this, that, and the other, then I could love them. But it's always a disavowal of the misanthropy and a deferral of any kind of ability to kind of just accept people as different that is postponed.
And maybe the great insight of the entire Christian tradition is to love people in their sins, which is to say, love them as they are, and then, okay, you try to help them. But Christianity, as opposed to what we think of as the left nowadays, is totally at odds with it, which is to say, people are fundamentally sinful, so it shouldn't shock you in any way that people sin. Let's start from there and then see if we can help them, if we can shepherd them. And I don't mean in a PMC sense. I mean in a real robust communal way. I mean, when the church is at its best, that's what it does. And so if you start with that different thing, like any little thing's not going to offend you, because by default setting, you expect people to do the worst things. And so when they don't do the absolute worst things, you're kind of happy with the shitty things they do. So it's just a difference in, and I mean, that's kind of what Land is getting at. He's using transcendental in a bit of a broader way to just refer to somebody's foundational default setting. I mean, in Lacanian terms, it's kind of how our fundamental fantasy structures our experience of everything, right? Obviously, Land is at odds with Lacan and Žižek theoretically, but I think what Land is talking about, though not identical to a fundamental fantasy, is somewhat similar. It's just this really fundamental default setting we have that we bring to everything we experience, right? We color everything. it's the whole, I mean, people use this example to think about Kant, right? Which is the rose tinted glasses. You have rose tinted glasses, right? And you've worn them since birth. I mean, you got to go along with the thought experiment, right? Of course, you haven't worn them since birth, but if that lens of that shading of the rose lens, the pinkish lens, right? If that's how you experience the world, then you really just think that's the world itself objectively, right? It would require taking the glasses off and seeing a multitude of colors and shades to understand that, oh no, the rosiness of the world is something that I was bringing to it, or at least the part of my body that was connected to that, blah blah blah, right? And so, Dave, you used to, I haven't heard you talk about it as much recently, but you did a good video back in the day on big moods, right? And for Heidegger, a mood is an attunement, right? It's a fundamental way that beings unconceal themselves to you. So so on the one hand, I think we're closely with Land here when he's talking about this transcendental miserablism as a experiential default setting. It's somewhat similar, though not identical, to Lacanian fundamental fantasy. And I think it's also connected in ways to Heideggerian Stimmung or attunement or Befindlichkeit, how one finds oneself, right? I see those connections here with what he's doing.
Yeah, this has always been my big issue with anything that is obviously pessimistic or optimistic, because I see it as, okay, it's your fundamental attunement. It's not reality. It's your disposition. It's not real. I mean, it's your reality, but it's not just because I have a fundamental disposition to be more this way or that way doesn't mean that I should build a worldview around it and then try to group myself up with other people who share that disposition, right? Like any kind of a future, any sort of a strategy or vision of a future that is for more than just me and a ragtag team of people who feel like me has to go beyond a fundamental mood orientation. But with that said, we're all basically coming from pessimism here. We really are.
Way or another, I might be more of an extreme pessimist than you are. I know I am, but
and Nance is too. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's weird that you guys even tolerate me, but yeah, it's true. I am more of I'm less pessimistic than you guys.
Yeah, but here's the thing, right? I tolerate it. I respect where you're coming from, because what I can't deal with is super egoic optimism. That's what drives me nuts. Somebody saying, look, I'm not upset that I was born. I'm fine with having been born. I'm fine with the world's shitty, but I'm not sad that I'm in it. Who the fuck am I to tell anybody how to feel about their existence? Like, I don't know. I can't go as far as certain pessimists. I don't like that I exist, but what does that prove about how you feel about your existence? Like you're saying, I mean, it is I guess it's not just some unimportant relativism, I guess. Like how you feel about your existence or how you feel about being in the world is fundamental to your basic disposition on things. But like you're saying, it's not the criterion of objective truth either. And so, yeah, I don't know. I just can't stand there's a war in Israel and Palestine. Well, just don't think about it. Just be happy. Enjoy what you have. Don't worry about it. That's negative. Don't fixate on the negative. Shut the fuck up. Like, that's what drives me crazy. But your stance, no, it doesn't. It doesn't affect me like that. Nor does anybody. I mean, if somebody's glad they exist, great.
Yep. Yeah, but your position does bother me though, because I'm trying to keep my head above water, and then you come in with all your pessimism. I feel like I've got some fucking thing around my ankle trying to pull me under the water. And it's like, maybe that's a problem. It's a me problem.
Yeah, it's a
But
you problem.
I'm just saying it does routinely trigger me, and it has for like as long as I've known you.
Does
But
Nance do it to you?
yeah, it's a couple of times, but except that he comes here for hope, so it's a little different,
I guess I don't know. My thing is with it, because that's the other thing is the super egoic position. I mean, I talk about this in the mega blog post at length. Is the super egoic position is don't talk about how you feel negatively. Shut up, bottle it up inside, be happy. Well, then that just makes me more miserable if I can't talk about it.
Yeah, it's weird.
And that's that
weird how it works.
instrumentalized toxic positivity, happiness industry bullshit where we're not allowed to be, we're not allowed to express this miserableness that we are already in.
Yeah, and if I'm supposed to not feel the way I feel and put on a happy face, and that just exponentially makes me feel worse. So there's a certain relief. It's a relief
Right.
in letting it out.
Well, I think that it is related to drive as well. And there's like a clash between
for me.
It's a clash between libidinal economies ultimately. But I don't want people to just put on a fake smile and fake it till they make it, or recite positive mental attitude aphorisms that they picked up from some book or whatever. I want it to be like, oh, we know, and then we resolutely tuck our chin down and push forward. Like that's it's different than like, just smile, just keep pushing the rock up the hill and smiling. Sisyphus is so happy.
Just ignore, don't act like there's no problem.
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, look, what you're getting at, I think this is important here, right? Is this transcendental default setting, right? Whether you're a pessimist or optimist. I mean, look, Land is basically attacking the left here for its default setting, but somebody could just go, but you have a default setting that finds a joyous enthusiasm in technological advancement leading to the singularity, which brings about human extinction. And you want to go, can you possibly relate to how not everybody would find that desirable? Like, that's not something to be joyous about for a lot of people. I mean, maybe the 25 members of the CCRU found it joyous to think about the singularity wiping us out, but many of us don't find that desirable future. And so you can say, like, he's saying, oh, well, you guys have this default setting that you view everything through, but you could go, well, yeah, but you do too. Now he might go, yeah, but mine is trying to actually facilitate change in the here and now. Like and that's the difference. He thinks that accelerating capital will bring about a better situation, at least in the near future.
Yeah, I just want to say, like, the thing on the Big Mood essay and what it ultimately built into is that shit I talk about in Waypoint, my first book. And it's don't go buying the book just for this reason, because this is not something I develop very much, but it is something I've thought with and referred to as psychological gerrymandering. And all you got to know about that is that it's kind of how the algorithm brings together people who are interested in something. Well, it can also bring together people who have a certain fundamental disposition or orientation towards mood or attunement, whatever. And left versus right, generally speaking, is doing the same thing. These are ideologies made for people with certain kinds of dispositions. And so when someone comes along and says, I'm part of the left, and then they're like, I want something good for everybody. It's like, okay, do you really mean everybody, or do you mean everybody who has this fundamental mood disposition that you have? Because, and you could just go to like George Lakoff as a shorthand for this, right? There's, liberals psychologically have this predisposition towards openness, curiosity, agreeableness, you know, as opposed to conservatives have like this sense of like, no, they prioritize security. They're thinking in terms of like usually looking out for what's immediate. These are fundamental mood orientations, and anything that is going to be broad based and like be a future that can have a variety of human beings that aren't just an aggregation of a very niche kind of person, you know, in the future, it's going to have to break out of that psychological gerrymandering, right?
Look, I mean, what I experience, you hear me talk about it a lot, but what I experience at my job, I mean, that's why so many of them, whether they're liberals or whether they're Democrats or Republicans, why they dislike woke politics or cancel culture, you know, they all talk about it in different ways, but the reason they dislike it is, and anybody who's tapped into it would say this is bullshit. But what they don't like is that they feel like their fundamental default setting is under attack. It's not about this policy or this belief or whatever. More of it is feeling like your basic way of experiencing things, your basic default setting or attitude towards the world is somehow the problem, and you're supposed to reorient yourself from the bottom up. And that's what they dislike. Most of them would go, yeah, I don't like racism, I don't like homophobia, I don't, you know. But even though that the liberal leftists will say that's what their agenda is about, that's not what the hidden meaning of all of it is. The hidden meaning is I don't like your basic way, your basic disposition, right? You need to completely reorient your disposition, and that's why people have such a disdain for it.
It's also just most people know when someone's speaking in a loose way or joking around, and there's a handful of people who they can't get it, and then they just try to, oh, you're serious, you really mean that, oh, you're participating in this terrible thing, and it's just like, oh, well, actually, you just suck and spend too much time on the internet or in college classrooms for that matter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so there's a fair bit of things to at least attempt to unpack in this paragraph. The second half of it is clear, and I mean, look, the whole thing about capitalism just becomes a vague and negative employment as a name for everything that hurts, taunts, and disappoints. I mean, that hits close to home, especially with younger versions of myself. So I go, yeah, maybe that's right. Maybe when I use the term capitalism, I'm just referring to whatever I don't like, right? I mean, and that's theoretically speaking, that's a very inaccurate, and it's bullshit, right? I'm not saying, of course, you can dislike things about capitalism. That goes without saying. But I see this point he's making where, you know, capitalism just becomes a term for anything you dislike in life. And somehow it's almost like, thanks, Obama. Remember that? Like this, thanks, capitalism. Right? You stub your toe, thanks, capitalism. And so I get this point that he's making, and I mean, I've seen it, and I'll be the first. I've done this. Like I look back and I'm like, yeah, I've used capitalism in this sense. Now, when I used it like that, I wouldn't want to have admitted to it at the time, but if I'm being honest with myself, I've done this too. But the first half of this, oh, go ahead.
That was very vulnerable of you, Mikey.
Oh yeah,
good job.
yeah, great. I feel so much fucking better now.
Don't worry, Mikey. This is a safe space for saying things like this.
Great. Yeah, so supportive. Just tell me to shut the fuck up and keep going. All right, look.
Back to work.
Yeah, there you go. That's the Žižekian thing. Is like the nice boss is the more totalitarian one. You want the old traditional master that's just like, I'm not your fucking friend. Go fucking work. Right? It's more honest. But okay, so this first half of this paragraph, it's hard to follow what the hell he's doing if you don't get the references. And I'm not going to bluff here. I haven't read Baudelaire's La Voyage. and I haven't read the Philip K. Dick story that this is referencing, but here's what we got. So the point of referencing Baudelaire and Philip K. Dick here is essentially this. There's a long leftist tradition of viewing capitalism as incapable of truly producing anything new and novel. That is, it is said to stifle the emergence of radical difference, that which is radically new, while simultaneously flooding us with little differences. This is what Baudrillard conceptualized as the simulation of difference, capital D, via the spread of marginal differences. Or the other way Baudrillard talks about it is how like homogeneous heterogeneity. So capitalism, and especially consumerism, is going to give us all kinds of sneakers and all kinds of cereals and all kinds of movies, but it's hiding the basic form of our lives is ultimately the same, never changing, doesn't alter. We all are radically homogenous in the form and structure of our lives, while simulating radical identity or radical individuality and difference via the marginal differences between the commodities we consume, the movies we like, the politics we consume. And so Baudrillard was tapped into this. So again, it's a magic show in a sense. Like, okay, we're going to flood the world with an array of bullshit differences, which mask the fact that nothing radically different, nothing radically new is occurring. And so let's read that again.
Like in time energy terms, I just want to say like the difference there would be like substantial difference would be, you know, something between like a king and a blacksmith, or a violin virtuoso and somebody whose, you know, calling is to care for orphans, and that they've done this their whole life. Like these are modes of mastery and world orientation that are different, like so different. And what capitalism gives us as our differences is like, oh, I drink Dr. Pepper from the little can, Nance drinks it from the big can.
I care about my health, he doesn't.
Yeah, that person wears Birkenstocks. This other person wears Crocs. Like, okay, I don't give a shit. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Which the point is, I mean, for Baudrillard, is that this flood of marginal differences masks the fact that what we all are fundamentally are the same consumer. We're all consuming the same way, shopping at the mall. Well, okay, that's the past, but you get the idea. Is that the form of consumption is radically homogenous, while the content of it is incredibly varying at all times, but nothing profoundly different is happening, like you said. Okay, so from Baudelaire's La Voyage, with its mournful discovery that human vice repeated itself universally in even the most exotic locations, which is to say, no matter where it goes, it's the same thing, right? Like, you don't have to, Land is going to tell you the point. It's just, obviously, if we had read this stuff, it would mean more to us. But the point is, with the mournful discovery that human vice repeated itself universally, even in the most exotic locations. In other words, human vice is the homogeneous same that's taking on all kinds of differentiated forms, but underneath those differentiated forms or those exotic locations, the same thing is going on, right? To the left-wing reading of Philip K. Dick as a Gnostic denunciation of commercialized change, okay, and that gets into this whole story. That I'm leaving that alone. But because here's the point, right? Capitalistic variety or difference and innovation, the new, has been totalized as difference without an essential difference. Just more of the same senseless dissimilarities. So here's the takeaway. Here's the point he's making, is that the leftist tradition has come. I mean, Baudrillard, I think, is part of this, right? The leftist tradition has come to say that capitalism is incapable of producing anything radically new. That as long as capitalism exists, no matter how it simulates difference, right? Or it gives us the ideology of, oh, things are changing, things are getting better. The leftists would say that underneath all that, capitalism is the exact same thing, doing what it always does, and it's going to stay the same until we're all dead, right? So there is no radically creative or transformative power within capitalism. All it can do is simulate change or becoming when, in fact, it can't deliver it in any substantial way. So, and then this is a weird out of like kind of left field connection. The grand master of this move is Arthur Schopenhauer, who lent it explicit philosophical rigor as a mode of transcendental apprehension. I mean, I've studied Schopenhauer and I've read Land's early essay because Schopenhauer is one of his big influences. Not as big as D&G and Bataille and Nietzsche, but Schopenhauer had an impact on him. And you go, well, what the hell is? I was scratching my head like, what is the connection here with Schopenhauer and this idea that capitalism can't produce anything new? But I think this is what he's getting at. Land's reference to Schopenhauer is getting at the way the latter, Schopenhauer, ultimately reduced all of the myriad differences within the phenomenal plane to the singular will operating unchanging in the noumenal plane. All differentiated phenomena are merely manifestations of the same exact, unchanging, eternal, noumenal will. Despite the seeming temporal changes within the realm of phenomena, there is an eternal, noumenal constant behind the scenes called the will. I think that's what he's doing there. He doesn't unpack it, so we're kind of left to interpret it for ourselves, but I think that's the point. And then the Philip K. Dick thing, he wrote in I believe it's a book called Dallas. He wrote about this black prison, and it says, the quote is, once in a cheap science fiction novel, Fat, which is one of the characters here, Fat had come across a perfect description of the black iron prison, but set in the far future. So if you superimpose the past, ancient Rome, over the present, California in the 20th century, and superimpose the far future world of the android cried me a river, over that, you get the empire as the supra or trans-temporal constant. Everyone who had ever lived was literally surrounded by the iron walls of the prison. They were all inside it, and none of them knew it. So obviously, okay, we don't know what's going on in the story. We don't have the context we need to really properly understand this. But I think what we get is the idea is that whatever's going on, if you superimpose the past, present, and future together, if you line them up, right, if it's a kind of do an isomorphism of the three, what you get is you see something constant is there when you view them all together, and it's this black iron prison or something, which again, I don't have enough context to go off of, but I get what he's trying to say, that despite all these changes, if you view them all together as one, you see that there's a constant, which is to say nothing's ultimately changing. So this is just another way of him trying to provide an example of what he's describing as this thing the left views as capitalism's inability to produce the new. So the last part is obviously easier to grasp. The point is that if we view time, which for us is capitalist time, as capable of nothing but the reiteration of the same, then we are forever cut off from a revolutionary future, if in fact capitalism is our only option. The transcendental miserableists, or Mark Fisher in this case, can only depressively say no to all things because capitalist temporality, the hauntology of lost futures, can never lead us to a radical difference, to a profound new. The reason why the left is left with this default depression is because it gave up on Marxian historicism, which was the source of the optimistic spirit within communist movements. Marxian historicism is what confidently declared to workers, things will become new, things will get better. This is the dialectical movement of history. A Marxist without the Marxist theories of economics and of history is, indeed, a very sad creature. Without the core elements of traditional Marxist theory, the Marxist can only despairingly utter, everything sucks because everything is capitalism. Thoughts?
I was looking at the chat and I regret it because I have no idea what's going on over there. I feel like you guys are all having a conversation with yourselves, or like, I don't even know if you guys are communicating with one another, but I can't really figure out what you're all saying. But I want to say what's up to Salamoon da Costa, channel regular, channel favorite, one of my favorite guides I've ever been with when I'm exploring the world. He gave Anne and myself a tour of Katowice, Poland last November. We hope to see him in April. It's good to see him, Mihao. He is one of the contributors in Underground Theory. I'm going to go ahead and make a quick plug for these two books. Watch this. I'm going to turn the camera on. Now, I understand, folks, you probably can't see anything and everything's frozen on your end, but I am holding up, you just have to imagine in your mind if you can't see it, a copy of Underground Theory and a copy of Timenergy, which is kind of blown out by the light here. You can't really see it properly. There we go. Timenergy, Why You Have No Time or Energy. The answer for why you have no time or energy is because everyone wants to reduce it to labor power. Doesn't even matter if you're in a capitalist society or not, but the capitalist form of society has found the most efficient way of reducing us and all of our vital life force down into labor power. So check out the Timenergy book, check out the Underground Theory book. They're available on Amazon, or you can save some money and get them from the theory-underground.com/store. Go get them there so you can get them a bit cheaper if you want. But that's the real way to get into the discourse, or to really engage with people here. There's a few people who came out of the channel who are in that book alongside Slavoj Žižek. There's several people in there who probably never imagined that by being fellow travelers of me, of David McKerracher, and Theory Underground, that they would end up in a book beside the likes of Slavoj Žižek. But it's true. There is such a potential recognition on the horizon for you all. If you're smart and you know how to sound good and engage with us in a substantial way. Nance is laughing. You don't have to be that smart, but you do have to try, and you have to have resolve, and you have to really...
You have to be smarter than Hegel.
You have to be smarter than Hegel. You have to love theory, and you have to actually be grinding on it. And preferably, the best way is through the courses at Theory Underground. And so Mikey's teaching a course on Nick Land. It's an introduction to Nick Land that will require him going through the major periods of Land's work, also the philosophical precursors to his work. He's doing all of this in like 4 weeks, so it begins on October 28th. We're doing this as a way of hopefully getting some more signups. This is like we do this stuff because we love to, but also the course is coming up really soon, and so we want to make sure that you don't miss it. And so get in on it. I've shared the link in the chat. I'll probably share it in a minute again. But yeah, sign up for the course. And if you if the times aren't going to work for you, then you can always watch the videos after the fact. The time, by the way, is going to be what, Mikey? I think we figured it out, right? Isn't it 4:30 your time?
Actually, I'm still unclear on it. We need that. Where's that thumbnail or whatever with the time on it?
I know.
Hold on, I wonder if I've got it. Maybe I can just look at Instagram.
It's on Instagram. Yeah, I know it's on Instagram. But anyway, it's going to be Saturdays. It's going to be 4 Saturdays in a row. We start the weekend of Halloween.
October 28th, I believe.
October 28th. Even if you have children and you have to go out trick-or-treating that weekend, you shouldn't have to miss this course because this will be on the 28th. And so get in it. Get to it.
It's 5 p.m. Eastern.
Sweet. 5 p.m. Eastern. There we go. Which is even going to work for some people in Europe. All right. It's not so late.
So earlier than the Žižek course.
Yeah, the Žižek course was a lot later. All right. That's the main thing I wanted to say. But as far as this Black Iron Prison and everything like that.
We can't do it justice right now. But the point is, like, all I wanted to do was get at the heart of what the point he was making is. And I think we've done that. At some point, you know, I find this essay obviously interesting, and I think it's a kind of a reality check for me as some kind. I say it, some kind of leftist. It's a reality check where I'm like, yeah, I don't want to just use capitalism as. I want to be more specific and focused when I use that word than just simply using it flippantly to refer to anything I don't like. Right? Everything I don't like is not capitalism. So.
Yeah, and just saying CMC prime is not going to get you out of it either. Like, it's functioning that way in the discourse. So
yeah.
But yeah, that psychological bundle of resentments and disgruntlements really does.
Doesn't it kind of describe a lot what we see on the left? Let's be honest.
Yeah, 100%.
And I mean, look, this is the thing, right? A lot of leftists do not at all like the idea that I'm teaching this course. And I said it to Dave earlier. First and foremost, my fidelity is to philosophy before politics. And maybe that makes me not a leftist or anybody who's committed to political emancipation in people's eyes. I don't know what to tell you, except that I think engaging with positions that are at odds with our own only helps strengthen our own positions. Like, I don't think land wrecks the left once and for all. It's over. I don't believe that. I think he gets at fundamental issues that are problems on the left that can be worked out, can be changed. But I think it's helpful to have somebody. Sometimes we're not great at holding up a mirror to ourselves, and it takes somebody who dislikes you. Like, and this is the thing. Like, I work with guys. We don't all like each other. We wouldn't hang out on the weekends. We're not interested in, being friends. But sometimes one of those pricks, and I'm one of those pricks to them, right? Like, sometimes it takes somebody not liking you to reveal something about yourself that you go, yeah, I guess I didn't see that part of myself, and maybe I don't like that. That's part of myself, but it takes that otherness or that position of difference to catch it, and I think that can be helpful.
It's like Verhoeven made the most American movies ever, and he's Dutch, but because he is an outsider, he can make the quintessentially American film.
Well, that's what Žižek says about when I asked him about Baudrillard. What did he say? One of the things he really liked was Baudrillard's book on America, because Žižek's like, look, Baudrillard as this French intellectual, he sees like these fundamental American fantasies better than Americans can. And Slavoj is pretty humble when it comes to himself, but I think Slavoj has insights into America also that Americans aren't going to spot. And I think the same is true with somebody like Land when it comes to having this different view on the left. Look, this is a guy who was around nothing but leftists his whole time at Warwick University, right? I mean, he was raised in it. So when you see somebody who was, and even now he'll say, okay, I was never really a leftist. Okay, fine. But he was embedded in that. There was all of these Marxists around him. The Marxists hated him because not so much for his views on capitalism, just for his general disposition and the way he carried himself and the way he lectured and all of that. But
how he crawled across the floor, growling into a microphone.
He croaked into a microphone. Thank you.
Yeah, croaking into a microphone.
I think it's Robin McKay. One of them. in the one of these histories of the CCRU I was reading. That's it. At one of the, I think it's a virtual futures conference, Land laid on the floor, croaking into the microphone, I guess like a frog, while Robin McKay blasted jungle music. And some of the older Marxists got up. They had enough, and one of them screamed, some of us are still Marxists, And so yeah, they hated him because of this experimental shit he was doing. But point is, he was around leftists all this time, and so when you have somebody who was around leftists and then ends up becoming one of the founders of the neo-reactionary movement, obviously this person doesn't see things the way we do. And I'm the type, or I want to be the type of leftist that can cope with that and go, okay, so you don't fucking like us. You're not with our basic principles. You're certainly not with our basic default setting. I'm not with our basic default setting right now. Okay, but I can fucking take that. So bring it on. Let me hear what you don't like, and then I'll do exactly what we're doing right now. We'll think about it. We'll reckon with it, and see where we end up with it. But I'm not running. I don't care I don't care if it's Heidegger or if it's Nietzsche or if it's Land. Conservatives are not going to go away. Like Dave, you're always big on saying, like, we're talking about fundamental dispositions or default settings. Like conservative policies, obviously those can go away, but this basic default setting of I want security and I want to maintain a certain stability and lifestyle. Yeah, I think there's always going to be people who think that way. Now, obviously, Land is not a conservative in that way. I don't mean to make this connection here because to a typical conservative, Land's about as anti-conservative as you can get. But it's just the point that, I'm not afraid to read conservative thinkers and hear them out. I think leftist ideals, and again, we can have all these issues with the actually existing left, but these ideals like freedom with a capital F or justice with a capital J, right? Yeah, I have a fidelity to these basic ideals, and I think they win out over other forms of ideals. And so I don't know. I'm not so scared or timid of hearing something that contradicts my own position. And I feel like tearing with the negative in this sense only makes me know my position even better.
Mm-hmm.
I guess there's this weird thing like, our leftist view of the world is so vulnerable that if anybody hears anything that doesn't immediately align with it, they're going to be converted to something else. Doesn't that render the leftist theory of the world so weak and like, oh my God, they hear anything except exactly what we say, they're going to not be one of us. Fuck that. I think.
Yeah, no, there's this tendency through like the podcast that Elton loves, Know Thy Enemy, which is all about conservatives. It's like Know Thy Enemy, and it just focuses on like William F. Buckley, a whole episode on him, a whole episode on Burnham, a whole episode on this guy, that guy, mostly guys. And or like Matt McManus, who does a lot of stuff with plastic pills, and he's always got, coming on people's podcasts or doing something about, this is the deal with this right winger, this is the deal with Heidegger, this is the deal with so and so, and I think it's a good first step. But the issue is that there's none of this tarrying with the negative. You can always tell, like, they're not reading these guys to go, hey, what can we actually learn here? Because like these guys can see something we can't. They're instead reading them like, okay, let's know who our enemy is. And it's like, okay, yeah, but you've instrumentalized theory towards a pre-given goal that has totalized every thought and everything you read into this binary. And it's just, I don't know. I don't think it's...
I didn't read Heidegger or reading the time as he's written by an enemy. Maybe that's why the book changed my life, and I know it changed yours.
Right. And that's how we read Nietzsche as well. Right. And well, I think Daniel Tutt's doing a good job in his book on Nietzsche. You know, he is pointing out that you can't just be like Jonas Cheka and be, you know, have your cake and eat it too without tarrying with the fact that no, Nietzsche is your enemy, man. And Cheka doesn't seem to ever really sit with that. It's like, look, hey, I don't even read him as an enemy, but he does think of himself as made of some kind of special stuff that I'm not made of and that I'm a worker who should keep working. And if you guys don't know what I'm talking about, Daniel Tutt's book will come out in February. You can go read Lizardo's book called Nietzsche the Aristocratic Rebel, or you can read the quotes, the key quotes that I bring into Timenergy, Why You Have No Time or Energy. But the point is, I still think he's valuable, and it's not because I don't have fidelity to this idea. Like I don't like this idea left or whatever. It's like you could describe me that way. You could also describe me a lot of other ways. I don't give a shit. The thing I care about is trying to understand the world dialectically, as I understand what that means. And I know everybody. It's one of the most annoying things. Oh, that's not dialectical. Everyone says that whenever they see something they don't like. But what I mean is, there's a baby in every bathwater. There's a kernel of truth in everything. You got to read through things to get those perspectives. And if you're only doing that between disagreeing positions, say between anarchists and socialists or Marxists and syndicalists or what have you, and you're not also thinking, what does Heidegger, Burnham, Land, even Dugan bring to the table? Like, what do they actually see? And what do they actually speak to that the left fails to speak to without just, like, if you can't do that, then how are you going to have a real assessment of the current situation? I don't think you can. And I think that's one of the things that was my big realization back in 2020 was like, nobody's doing that. And someone needs to do that. And I want to do that. And I'm trying to only work with people who either get it and are trying to do that or are at least open to being in dialogue with us while we do it. Right. And that's the cool thing about someone like Tut is he'll still be in dialogue with us while we do it. Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, yeah. Everything you said about Land here applies to Nietzsche and Heidegger for me.
Well, yeah. I mean, look, the three of us are specifically interested in thinking about the future. Well, with Land, we have somebody who has spent his entire life hyperstitionally thinking about the future, right? And there's a lot to fucking learn from that. And we can disagree, we can agree on certain things, but look, I was young and when I was more of your typical leftist. If they're conservative, they're stupid. They're an idiot. Like that. That's what you. But that's the culture war logic. Is that the person you disagree with, who's on the other side, is an idiot, doesn't know anything, completely wrong about everything,
or they're a sneaky genius trying to pull one over on you.
Yeah, and then you get in the scapegoat logic. And here's the fact of the matter: Heidegger was absolutely brilliant. He is not a leftist. Lacan, Lacan's one of my most important influences ever. He's a conservative. He was not some radical leftist. Baudrillard does not fit the typical. I mean, early on maybe, but he's not your typical Marxist. I mean, he breaks with Marxism in a lot of ways. There are lots of people who are not radical leftists that have a whole lot of insight into a lot of things, and I don't have any problem getting insights from them. I'm not going to apologize for that, because Heidegger. So yeah, Heidegger obviously has his fucking problems. We know that, but his insight into mood, right? His insight into death, his insight into the works of art. These are singular insights into these topics. And so, yeah, I have no problem being inspired by that. And so I'm just not with that logic anymore, that if somebody is not some sort of Marxist or emancipatory leftist, then they have no insight into anything. That is just fucking ridiculous to me. And there's all kinds of people in the Christian tradition, in the Islamic tradition. There's all these traditions, right? Buddhist traditions that you can get all kinds of things from, right? Bring you to connect dots you never connected before. Yeah, I'm not closing myself off to any of that. And I feel like I don't know how you feel about the specific ideals I'm talking about, but I think I can maintain a fidelity to those ideals while realizing that not everybody who ever walked the earth has those same ideals. And yet at the same time, they had insights into a whole number of things. So, I mean, it's almost like I feel like we're wrapping up the stream, but we've got some more to read here. So maybe we should accelerate the exegesis here.
Dude, that's you, man. That's all you, man. You keep acting like you're on this like closing it out ramble. Like I like it. I'm having fun. I'm not in a hurry, so I don't give a shit. But
okay, all right. We'll slow it
But I'm just
down.
gonna start cracking the whip on you here. Get back to work. No, I'm just kidding. So should I? Do you want me to read a
Read the
paragraph
next
or
fucking
what?
paragraph, jerk.
Okay, which one is it?
We're on the third. But I'm saying I do think from here on, we've set the context. We know what's going on here, so we can get through this quicker.
Is it the top one?
No, it's the one that's for the transcendental miserablest.
Yeah, that's the top one. For the transcendental miserableist, capitalism is the suffering of desire turned to ruin, the name for everything that might be wanted in time, an intolerable tantalization whose nature is unmasked by the Gnostic visionary as loss, decrepitude, and death. And in truth, it is not unreasonable that capitalism should become the object of this resentful denigration. Without attachment to anything beyond its own abysmal exuberance, capitalism identifies itself with desire to a degree that cannot imaginably be exceeded, shamelessly soliciting any impulse that might contribute an increment of economizable drive to its continuously multiplying productive initiatives. Whatever you want, capitalism is the most reliable way to get it, and by absorbing every source of social dynamism, capitalism makes growth, change, and even time itself into integral components of its endlessly gathering tide.
What's he getting at here? He's saying, look, transcendental miserableness wants to say capitalism. All it's going to do is keep us longing for this unrealized future where, in other words, it's not going to make good on delivering the new, the different with a capital D. And so we're left desiring something we can never get. But for Land, capitalism is the complete opposite. That capitalism is precisely that which will usher in radical difference. For him, it's capital is the only real emancipatory mechanism we've ever found. Capitalism, and here's the thing, Marx is the first one to say this kind of stuff, right? Communist Manifesto, it melts all that is solid into air, right? He talks about how it's taken the doctor and the artist and turn all of them into its wage laborers. Marx is the first one to see how revolutionary the onset of the capitalist mode of production was, and how it just ripped through the old feudal order with its old values and identities, etc. And it melted them all away, right? And so Land still thinks that the most radical developments, the most radical changes haven't even come along yet. And for him, he thinks the reason is because our mode of government, which in the CCRU reader, or the CCRU writings, they have this thing called the architectonic order of the eschaton, which, okay, I'll unpack it in the course. But basically, that's our system of global power that is trying to keep the global capitalist. And now, here's the thing. The global status quo in place, which is to say, this order, which would be government and capitalists, right? It's made up of both. They want to keep capitalism subservient to it, which is to say, yeah, we want capitalism to be our economy, but we don't want it to get so out of control that it breaks apart our own power system, right? And so this is why in the 90s you could view the CCRU as ultra leftists, right? In their fidelity to capital. Because what they're saying is we want capital to be unleashed because it's the true agent of deterritorialization, the Luso-Guattarian term, which is to say it's the true mechanism or agent of change, right? It breaks down the structures imposed on people and societies, and like it did in feudalism, we want it to do even more of that. And so we're the ones who are opposing the apparatus of capture or the state by siding with capital, because capital is the thing that can defeat the state. And that's why you can view this back then as a strange form of radical ultra leftism, because it wants to do away with Oedipus, it wants to do away with the state, it wants to do away with those the forms of power imposed on people by these large apparatuses, and they think capital is what will do it. And D&G, this is part of how they view capital in in Anti-Oedipus. And so they got tapped into this logic, like, what if capital is actually the thing that can break apart these shitty power relations we don't like? Now, of course, there is this immediate comeback, which the Marxists can just go, what are you talking about? There is no dynamic, there is no social relation between capitalist and wage laborer without capital, right? But for, I don't know if I want to even say D&G here, but for the CCRU, yeah, they'll say, yeah, but you let capital accelerate, it's going to break all of that down. And this is part of Marxist theory as well, with what we talked about. The forces of production are eventually going to overload the relations of production and bring about a revolutionary transformation of the economy, right? So there's this weird way where siding with capital the way they do can be viewed, at least at one point, as ultra leftism. But that's the thing. Land thinks, no, you guys are stuck in depression because you view capital as that which prevents and stifles revolutionary change, revolutionary becoming, revolutionary newness. I think it's the engine of it. And instead of fighting this, pedal to the metal, let's accelerate it. And that's why there's a weird sense that he would say he's the joyist or the optimist in this situation, as opposed to the leftists.
Cool.
And so, yeah, I mean, and look, here's the thing. This is this great statement here I want to run past you, right? And I would love to. This is something that if I ever had the chance, I would put this question to Land. I would say, okay, you say whatever you want. Capitalism is the most reliable way to get it. Okay, challenge accepted. We want our time energy. We want to be freed from work and wage labor. We want economic stability. In other words, we want our time energy and we don't have to worry about getting money. Okay, you say capitalism is the best way to get whatever we want. Then how do we do it? How does capitalism, if you can show me for real that capitalism is what gets us our time energy, liberates us from wage labor, and gives us, surplus economic stability, then you have converted me. Question is, how do you think capitalism can actually give us this, right? When capitalism thrives on wage labor, this is one of these. I don't know how he would. I mean, would he just go, "Oh, well, you can't have that," or would he go, "No, I actually think capitalism is the thing that can abolish wage labor via automation, technological progress. If you actually want your time energy, you should be a capitalist." I mean, that's a hard thought to swallow, or a hard pill to swallow for us, a hard thought to bear. But
I had a friend who was really into Austrian economics who believed that, but that's because that person just saw cheaper commodities as basically equal to time energy. They didn't understand point. The whole point being like you need large energy infused repeatable blocks of time throughout your week, month, year in order to do things that are like, worthwhile activities, right?
Mhm.
Not just the consumption of basic commodities, but the actual, you know, mastery of say violin or climbing mountains or whatever the fuck people like to do, jacking off on the beach. Actually, see that's the thing. Jacking off on the beach or going to a movie or drinking at the pub, like none of those require time energy. You can do that with garbage time. But there's just certain kinds of activities you cannot do, and capitalism doesn't show us any way of actually uh, doing
look,
those kinds of things, right?
look, and somebody could say, well, first off, I'm not even doing this to attack land, but I still feel like somebody could say, oh, that's somehow ad hominem or something. I just would say to land, as far as I can tell, I know I don't know you, but time energy has not ever seemed to be a problem for you. Okay, you got to teach at Warwick. Oh, I've been corrected. Warwick. I always put the second W in there. At Warwick. And then whenever you got fired or whether you resigned, however it went, you take off, you relocate to China. You've been there ever since. As far as I know, I don't, it just doesn't seem like he struggles for money or time energy, is all I'm saying. And I would say, okay, that's very great that you got to not, and maybe he did struggle with these things. And I'm just talking out of my ass. I'm just saying, from based on what I know, he's always just seemed to be able to, especially the last decade. He's always on Twitter. He's always, uh, he always would have a new blog post or something coming out. And so if he's not at a university and he's not in a teaching position or whatever, and yet he can always write, he can always engage intellectually, then my question would be like, okay, so somehow you're able to manage that. There's lots of us who can't. So like what we should, oh well, that's the luck of the draw. You guys back to work, peasants. Yeah, I can't accept that. So I don't know how he would deal with that. But I mean, the whole thing of if you want something, capitalism is the best way to get it. Okay, well, show me how it can give us our.
We'll
No, go ahead.
we'll see, man. We'll see. We'll see if we can, get a conversation with him. You'll be able to ask your question. But for now, yeah, who knows? Who knows how he'll answer that? So
Okay, so then the next one here, I'll read this real quick. Uh, go for growth now means go hard for capitalism. It is increasingly hard to remember that this equation would once have seemed controversial. On the left, it would once have been dismissed as risible. This is the new transcendental miserablism as a dyspeptic ghost. Deceptic ghost. And so, why is that the case? Go for growth now means go hard for capitalism. It would have once been controversial to say this. Okay, well, go for growth used to mean go for socialism, since it was thought that capitalism, despite its amazing growth, actually hinders the productive capabilities of humans and machines due to capitalist relations of production. Socialism used to mean the emancipation of the forces of production. The fact that go for growth now means go hard for capitalism is a testament of the failure of the left's abandonment of positive economism. Anything to add?
dude, okay, we read 70% of the time and we talk 30% of the time when we do exegeticals, and you keep stopping like
Well,
every
okay,
10
I
seconds.
don't want to just bulldoze you guys if there's something you want to add.
I'll interject if I want to add something.
You'll add something if I tell you to add something.
All right.
All right, now go ahead. Read the next one.
All right, I got
Nance,
it.
you do it.
Perhaps there will always be a fashionable anti-capitalism, but each will become unfashionable, while capitalism, becoming ever more tightly identified with its own self-surpassing, will always, inevitably, be the latest thing. Means and relations of production have simultaneously emulsified into competitive, decentralized networks under numerical control, rendering paleo-Marxist hopes of extracting a post-capitalist future from the capitalism machine overtly unimaginable. The machines have sophisticated themselves beyond the possibility of socialist utility, incarnating market mechanics within their nano-assembled interstices and evolving themselves by quasi-Darwinian algorithms that build hyper-competition into the infrastructure. It is no longer just society, but time itself that has taken the capitalist road.
So that's his way of talking about the inevitability of capital bringing about this techno future that he, through his theory fictions, trafficked with, which is his preferred way of talking about it, trafficked with in the 90s. He thinks that all we're doing, there's this other important essay he wrote called Suspended Animation. And in it, I mean, suspended animation. The point is, capitalism is that which animates, and all of our, from his perspective, social democratic welfare state, Keynesian politics, which some of us would go, what are you talking about? Like Reagan and Thatcher killed all that shit, which he celebrates Reagan and Thatcher. But, you know, it wasn't radical enough. So even their form of neoliberalism, there's still this leftover remnant of Keynesianism. And he thinks that this is what continues to suspend animation. And so, yeah, he's talked about this in different ways throughout his whole career. Architectonic order of the eschaton is one way of talking about it. The human security system is another way he talks about it. And he thinks that this is going to intensify. And so as we head into forms of technology that are going to radically modify our bodies and our intelligence, he thinks that this is going to increase the necessity, at least from the human perspective, of human security systems, which is to say states, regimes, policies, etc., that police technological development and make sure that certain thresholds aren't crossed. And he thinks that this is going to continue to develop into a real overarching system of power that is trying to keep these forms of revolutions in technology controlled and at bay, right? And he just thinks that at some point it's going to break, I mean, singularity especially, but these types of body enhancements, intelligence enhancements are going to lead to a new species, basically. There's a kind of techno-speciation that's going to occur. And when we have this other species of humans, which some of us won't consider human, whether we call them cyborgs or replicants or whatever we want to call them, this renders a whole new problem, which is to say, how do we keep them in check? And so he also referred to the system that tries to keep these forms of artificial intelligence systems or programs in check, the Turing cops, right? And so the Turing cops are going to be these institutes, these programs, however they get actualized would be another thing. But basically, there's going to be a whole set of checks and balances on artificial intelligence. Now, we're not talking about singularity. We're just talking about cyborgs or humans with intelligence enhancement or whatever. But this is a real threat. And he thinks that the day of humanism hasn't actually arrived yet. It's only when these types of enhanced beings start to emerge, and especially if they decide to collectivize, or there's a certain solidarity between them, that humanism proper will actually kick in and go, you're not really human. We're the real humans. And this will be a neo form of racism or hyper racism. And so these are all these issues that he's been thinking about for a long time. But yeah, but his thing is fuck it, pedal to the metal, let's go for it, because it's gonna happen anyway. And so trying to just prevent it at all costs or delay it as much as you can, there's just no point in it, because it's inevitable in the way that Skynet is inevitable in Terminator movies. And even though the last four sequels aren't nearly as good as the first Terminator movies, there is a takeaway after them. Just say, no matter what the fuck you do, Skynet just keeps coming back. And that's kind of the overarching point of the whole series, is that no matter what they do, no matter what they try, Skynet, it's going to fucking happen, right? And so, fuck it, let's go for it and see where it goes. I don't know how much I even unpack there.
I love it. That's. I want to let you. I know that you're in particular. One of the things that I find in Land interesting is this thought that he's like hyper racism, or when there's a techno speciation. What's going to happen versus natural humans as opposed to unnatural humans? Yeah. And I think we're already there in a sense, and it's something that I think Nance and I have been talking about a lot on tour. It's something that I think we see our role as somehow in relation to that human thing. We're on the side of human stuff in a time when we already think that we're dealing with robots. People are already instruments of the machine. People are already going robot mode. When people tell us to get back to work, or they say, what are you going to do with that? Or when they say, well, it's just the rules, or that's just how it works, or they're robots. This is Hannah Arendt's idea of administrative evil. These are people who are appendages of the machine. And we are also appendages of the machine, trying to find our humanity, and that's that word, because I know that a lot of the people into this shit are like post-humanist, transhumanist, anti-humanist.
Yeah,
whatever.
Rand's not on the side.
That's a vague fucking word. Yeah, and it's also a vague fucking word. It's a vague fucking word, because for me it means the human is the being that is virtually purposive. And I get into that in the Timenergy book, but the basic point is like, that doesn't mean that we have some essential essence that we need to return to, but there is something in our essence that is a way of becoming, and putting your time energy towards things that you've taken a resolute stand on. There's something there. This is not the time or place for really unpacking what we mean. Just know that there's a whole lot of shit there, and that's part of why this is all so fascinating, is because he's definitely ahead of his time. I mean, fuck. He started working at Warwick when I was born. Same year. I was born the year he started teaching at Warwick. So, it's like he was thinking about this stuff when I was like shitting my pants, So it's like to have discovered recently that somebody was talking about this is fascinating, In
a philosophically rigorous form. Okay, not rigorous in Kantian rigor, but in a very philosophically rigorous form unto himself. Beyond just writing sci-fi, novels. Thinking this through using philosophical concepts. And so that is one reason why we want to engage with this work, is there are issues on the horizon that are important to all of us that he was thinking about. Same with Baudrillard. I mean, Baudrillard was, we know how much profit his ass was. I think Land is shaping up to have this prophetic dimension to him. I think we disagree with Land on like basic default values, I think, which is to say him just thinking the human is something to be overcome. He's Nietzschean in that sense. Like in a weird way, he's championing the overman. I teach you the overman. Human is something to be overcome. I think Land is the way he's a Nietzschean, and I don't think he's sitting there going, "Oh, I like some malevolent evil gene." I know that's the way that memes present him. Like, I just want humans to suffer and die. Like, I don't think that's how it's easy to view him that way. I don't think that's how he's viewing this situation. But nonetheless, he thinks that, as he says, nothing human makes it out of the near future. And he's for that. And that's where we have a problem with that. Like, no, I don't feel this need. But then you get into the whole thing that you just raised, Dave, which is really important. I know that philosophers were known, you just guys sit around and try to redefine words. What's a tree? What's really a tree? I get it. Like, it is a little funny thing about philosophers, and we do that. But it's really important in this context to define the human, because this isn't just philosophical speculation. This is going to become profoundly politicized in the future, and I think we need to be ahead of it philosophically.
It has been heavily politicized throughout history, and we have yet to.
Yeah, you're right. It's already happened. You're right.
We've yet to give a satisfactory answer, and using this pressure, to accelerate our own ability to approximate an answer to that question, I think is key. Because it does definitely feel like time is running out. And
keep talking. I'm gonna grab something real quick. Hold on.
There has never been a satisfactory answer, which is why I say I'm anti-human. I don't know what it means to be a humanist, let alone post-trans, any of these other things. So being an anti-humanist is the only thing I can land on and feel good about, or come down on and feel good about. But yeah, we already are at this hyper racism moment in time where people are locked in to the course that they were born into as a consequence of their material conditions. And it's still people like the movie Gattaca, like that was like science fiction, and people are like, oh, wouldn't it be weird if that happened? But no, it is happening, and it's been happening.
See, films like Elysium too. I mean,
yeah.
That's why I think one thing that this is one takeaway I think all of us should take away from Land and CCRU. I think we need to take science fiction more seriously going forward, and that they certainly did, and I think that's a key for what the three of us in particular, but everybody in our circle wants to do. We're trying to resuscitate the future, and I think that's going to necessitate us real seriously engaging with sci-fi.
Yeah, this is why we started a sci-fi book reading club at Theory Underground. We started a bunch of clubs that we haven't really done much with because we started them before tour, and then we weren't able to really do anything outside of tour during tour. But yeah, we have a sci-fi book reading club where we read a book or two per month, and then get in small groups to discuss them. And if you're listening to this and you're interested, if you want to be a part of it or whatever, then just know that the next discussion, whenever it is, we don't know yet, just the email will eventually go out. It's Clara and the Sun, and the first Blade Runner book called Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep. That's the first two.
Classic, yeah.
Nance pounded those out like on a weekend or something, right?
Yeah, I've read Do Androids Dream so many times. But I always love going back to it. But Clara and the Sun, I read Clara and the Sun uh in less than 24-hour window. Like I started it one night and finished it the following
Yeah.
morning. Like it's a fucking great book.
Mhm.
Yeah, I love that book. I want to reread it soon.
Hey, just
But they're both good for thinking about this hyper racism thing. Okay, what, Mikey?
okay, just Dave, you'll probably recognize this because I remember reading this at the Baudrillard seminar you had me come teach at Boise State University. I think this is what's on the line when it comes to the human, right? It's a unique thing. It's not like we're sitting around just trying to define what trees are or what dogs are or whatever. Something more is at stake. So Baudrillard says in Symbolic Exchange and Death, from the 5th chapter, right at the beginning, starts off with, as soon as savages began to call men only those who were members of their tribe, the definition of the human was considerably enlarged. It became a universal concept. This is precisely what we call culture. Today, all men are men. Universality is in fact based exclusively on tautology and doubling. And this is where the human takes on the force of a moral law and a principle of exclusion. This is because the human is from the outset the institution of a structural double, the inhuman. This is all it is. The progress of humanity and culture are simply the chain of discriminations with which to brand others, capital O, with inhumanity, and therefore with nullity. That's the point, right? Is Baudrillard, whatever you define as human is going to imply somebody else not being human and being the threat to your humanity.
Right.
So he sees that as this great, like that's
Which
why
I'm fine with.
Well, okay.
Which I'm fine with. I also eat animals. I don't care. But I think he's right though. Everyone has their kind of idea of it. This is why we have to deconstruct our idea of it and then be really careful about how we build our idea of it, because no matter how we do it, it's not gonna be harmless.
Well,
Like,
that's
no matter how you do it,
the
it's not
Žižek
going to be
connection
harmless.
is no, you've got a scapegoat that's the inhuman.
Right.
You're going to define your humanity in opposition to. So that's the thing, right? As we develop artificial intelligence, we're going to keep saying, "Oh, they're not us. They don't experience like us. They're not really real. They don't have souls," right? But the issue is, if they feel like us, if they respond like us, if they think like us, guess what? At some point, they're us, and that's the thought nobody wants to reckon with. Is that at some point they're going to deserve the same dignity, respect that every human deserves. And what do you do with that, especially if you build them in order to free us from wage labor or labor in general? Then at some point they want to be emancipated from it. So this just gets into all of
considering we never got to get, considering that we never got to get freed from it, considering the fact that we never got basic dignity, considering the fact that we never even got this figured out with the human side, then we get this non-human side, and it's like, okay, I see how this would easily become like, it's the new trans person, it's the cyborg, it's like in the same way that we have a politics around, oh, there's this new thing, we need to center it. If you ain't it, you don't matter. We just need to, and the way the ruling class uses that today is to say, worker, get back to work. You need to have the right opinion about X, Y, or Z identity group, but your lot in life is working, and you actually don't deserve a good job, much less any job, if you have the wrong opinion about whatever it is. And it's like, it'll be the robot people next. It'll be the Clara and the Sun.
Well, that's
book, or it'll be the Andes from Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep,
No, and that's going to be used to cover up the fact that we humans don't ever get emancipated, and we become the tools, and these
Right.
replicants or androids or whatever it is that we created that come after us, they become the new emancipatory project. And again, it already is the case. That already is happening. We have we've been turned into these dumbed down fucking tools. Blah 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 blah. Anyway, that's getting in the weeds.
Well, and it's the people who have the wealth, power, privilege, whatever, to modify themselves in ways that gives them new capacities, and therefore they're more cyborg than us. Because obviously we're also somewhat cyborg. Or, you know, just because the cell phone is in your hand and not in your brain doesn't mean you aren't a cyborg when you have a cell phone. But I'm just saying, when you've got people who are able to withstand crazy temperatures, when you've got people who are able to fly, when you've got people who are able to whatever you're unlocking, whatever capacities intellectually say that you're unlocking, those people will be oppressed. But they will also be people of power and privilege, right? Unless we're talking about people whose modifications just make them into horse people, like from Sorry to Bother You, right? And it's just like,
it's a good movie.
It's just like crazy that's, you know, that's where we're headed. You know, there's going to be, they'll be like, the horse people are the same as us, the flying people who don't have to work. We're all in this together, people. It's us versus the people who are like the Amish, who don't want to get with the new technology. It's us versus them. And I don't know. This is obviously like stuff that has to get developed. There's an upcoming volume where we're all going to flesh out our thoughts on, you know, human futures at the conference next year for the Theory Underground conference. So if you haven't heard us talking about that yet, it's something we have been talking about, folks. So stay tuned. But anyway, we're just scraping the iceberg here. Let's get back into the text.
Well, can I? So I'm going to read one passage from Meltdown just because we're here talking about it. So, Meltdown has a place for you. As a schizophrenic, HIV, transsexual, Chinese, Latino, STEM addicted LA hooker with implanted mirror shades and a bad attitude, blitzed on a polydrug mix of K-Nova, synthetic serotonin, and female orgasm analogs, you have just iced 3 Turing cops with a highly cinematic 9mm automatic. The residue of animal twang in your nerves transmits imminent quake catastrophe. 0 is coming, and you are on the run. Now, again, a lot of that, there's jargon we would have to unpack, but
Yeah.
The point is, it's like you're this enhanced. I'm talking about basically like a replicant. I think that you're some enhanced human thing, and that's what you are. And you've had the iced 3 Turing cops. You've had to prevent them from shutting you down, because iced is this term he gets from William Gibson, which basically is a way icebreaker. There, I'd have to look at it, but ICE is an acronym. We'll deal with it in the course. But yeah, that's what he's saying in the future is like these enhanced cyborgs or robots are going to have to be dealing with the Turing cops and all of this. So he's definitely there trying to envision what all of this is going to lead to. Okay, so let's get back here. So he says, hence the transcendental miserablism syllogism. Time is on the side of capitalism. Capitalism is everything that makes me sad, so time must be evil. I do think that's a jab at Mark Fisher with hauntology. Or something like because that's for him, like our temporality is fucked up because of capitalism. And so this
is where I agree, right? This is where I agree, because there's a difference between kinds of time, and the kind of time that is dominated by the form of value and the labor time and labor power, reduction of time energy, like all of that shit. Yeah, I hate that kind of time. It's point time is the way that Byung-Chul Han talks about it, but it's linear. It's not cyclical. It's not something that we have between us that we can use. It's something that we are inframed by and into.
Well, and so that's the thing for Fisher. He thinks that capitalism has basically stalled time. We're in hauntology. We're suffering from our lost futures, right? And he thinks that this is brought about or determined by capital. And so capital's bad, time is capital, therefore time is bad, right? Now again, I think Mark would just come back and go, yeah, but I'm talking about a specific mode of time. I'm not talking about time as such. But nonetheless, for Land, he's going to stick with this because for him, time and capital are aligned. That there's a kind of cybernetic temporality at work in capital accumulation that is bringing about a kind of inevitable future development in technology that we're going to talk about throughout the course. But again, it's almost like a parallax view in the Žižekian sense, where you can view this situation of this connection between time and capital as depressing, or you can view it with joy, depending on how you view the role of capital. And if you view capital as like, look, we can get out of this fucking moment, because Land will admit he does feel like that the leftover of Keynesianism, the basic structures of our democracies, our liberal democracies, etc., are stalling progression, stalling technological advancement. So in that sense, I think he'd be a little charitable to what Mark was talking about, but he would just say, yeah, but the point is, and which Mark abandoned, was no, we need more capital. Now, look, even Mark, he remained a left accelerationist, and he says like Marxism itself is accelerationism in a way, because he views like, look, even Marx, right? We all know this. Marx thinks that if we want an emancipatory productivity, which i.e. socialism/communism, we need more of these capitalist dynamics in a way, an intensification of the forces of production, right? So Marx is already there. But the point is, I guess still that the Marxist socialist communist project would be, yeah, but this type of hyper productivity that we want so we can automate and blah, 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 it's separable from capital. And that's exactly where Nick's going to disagree. He's going to say that type of productivity is always going to be linked to capital, because productivity as we know it has always been linked to capital. Prior to the onset of the mechanism of MCM prime, the world did not have the type of production that we see now, the levels of productivity. And so Nick is just saying, look, I don't think you can separate technological development from capital accumulation. And Marxists like Fisher would want to say, and Nick Cernicek and Alex Williams also want to say, yes, we can, that there is a type of technological development that's possible after capital, post-capital. But Land just doesn't buy that. And this is one of these contradictions I think we need to tarry with, where it's, oh yeah, of course we can have this productivity without cap. I can't do that. Like I want to. There's an appeal to, yeah, of course we can do it with capital and still have the technological progress. But I think we have to really seriously sit there and go, is it possible? Because as far as what we know, all of the historical empirical data we have would seem to show that wherever there's massive productivity, there's capital accumulation. Now, again, you can counter that and go, yeah, but that's just the historical contingency. We haven't been able to actually get to where the Marxists want us to get. But I don't know. I see that as a real issue to tarry with. Okay,
Yep.
so here, but okay, the polar bears are drowning, and there's nothing at all we can do about it. And so I guess that's the depressing image of climate change, that capital is causing climate change, and there's nothing we can do about it. But this is the whole thing, right? And I guess that's one of the an ecologist would say, well, there's how you counter land. Like, we have to do something about capitalism, in order to ensure a future for ourselves. But that's where he has this different. Nope, accelerate it and see where we go. But we know we're going to die anyway, or we know that there's going to be catastrophe if we keep doing the same thing. Fuck it. Let's go full blown deregulated capital, and see where it gets us. And he might even say it might very well produce the solution to climate change if we let it deregulate. Again, I'm completely skeptical towards all of this stuff. I don't have an answer or solution to any of it, but that's at least the position I think he holds. Okay, who's got the next paragraph?
I'll take it. Capitalism is still accelerating, even though it has already realized novelties beyond any previous human imagining. After all, what is human imagination? It is a relatively paltry thing, merely a subproduct of the neural activity of a species of terrestrial primate. Capitalism, in contrast, has no external limit. It has consumed life and biological intelligence to create a new life and a new plane of intelligence, vast beyond human anticipation. The transcendental miserabilist has an inalienable right to be bored, of course. Call this new, it's still nothing but change.
Yeah. So he's saying
That
go ahead.
is that is that is one of those things I came to on my own, is that there's no reason outside of faith to believe that capital has limits. And I say that because everyone's like, oh, there's, you can't have infinite growth on a finite planet. And it's like, bitch, we've been off this planet for a long time. I know you're not part of the class of people who are actually, investing in space right now, but
I
we've
just
already
watched about a
mined
whole thing about
asteroids.
Dave. I don't know if you caught it on 60 Minutes. They had a thing I caught the other night, and I know I sound like a boomer even referencing that I watched 60 Minutes, but it was on, and it was all about how this guy has developed technology in 3D printing to be able to assemble and build complicated buildings and infrastructure on the moon out of the moon's own material. So we don't have to take a bunch of raw materials to the moon. This thing is going to build infrastructure using the moon's own material. And it's like
That's
they
sick.
have this figured out.
Yeah, and I grew up being told, like, by very very overly confident people, that there's no water anywhere else in the universe. There's no other planets like ours. Even if there was, there's no way we'd be able to travel that far, that fast. And so it's like, okay, well, those first two things are wrong. That third thing could be wrong too. People are so certain, and it's very obvious that certainty is pure ideology. It's like even if they're right, it's like the fact that they're using it to close down any conversation about the future is why it's like, yeah, well, that's obviously just a conversation ender. It's a thought terminating cliche.
Or to defer you into like lesser evilist politics. A lot of these conversations get hijacked and turned into just, oh well, we have to do something about what's going on right now, so vote for Joe Biden because he's going to stop the polar bears from being eradicated, which he also probably won't do that. But
Yeah,
I have no faith
yeah.
in Joe.
Keep focusing on things. Keep focusing on things you have absolutely no power about, and be like the people on my Facebook today who I saw, who were complaining that people have carried on with their lives even though there's like a war in the Middle East. And it's like, Yeah, I'm sorry, everything doesn't stop for something that we know for a fact we have no influence over. I'm sorry. This person's like been posting, the person in particular I'm thinking of has been posting all week, and it's like this performative despair. And it's like I mean, even if it's real, like even if it's like the most heartfelt thing in the world and it's like, then great. I just feel despair fatigued.
Hmm.
I feel despair fatigued. It's hard to keep caring. And I also feel anger fatigued. It's just, it's like, okay, yeah, I mean, I theoretically agree, but I don't have it in my heart, like the capacities to keep feeling this way. I felt this way for like 15 years. Like, what do you expect from me? You know, in the meantime, this is business as usual.
You're
Where have you
not
been?
somebody who has kept your head buried in the sand your whole life, though. I mean, I don't know. I'm mixed on, like, obviously, if you've done it, there's certain people I know that just I can't I won't hear any of it. I don't want to hear anything and I'm like, there's a way that some of them basically don't even want to live in the world where they don't, I mean, they don't want to know about anything that's going on. And but when you feel that way, I'm like, I respect where you're at because of the fatigue. You're fatigued because you're so immersed in what's going on.
Okay, okay, fair. Yeah. Well, and that's true.
I
It's
guess
like
you would agree.
when you
On
actually
some
see,
level, there's a kind of duty to know what the hell is going on with your other humans, your fellow humans. But there's also
right, like for
oh, go ahead.
remember Bradley Manning, now Chelsea Manning, released these this footage of like, you know,
Abu
U.S.
Ghraib.
military blowing up journalists or yeah. Well, that too, but like specifically, I'm talking about people walking along and they had cameras, not guns, and then they got gunned down. That footage, you could say that radicalized me in the sense that nothing was ever the same. Nothing's ever been the same. I started being like, wait, what? What are we doing? Um, that was a long time ago. That's so. It's like I get that people are seeing some of this footage right now, and that I could see how that's activating them in a way where it's like, yeah, everything in the world had better stop, and it's like, oh, so I guess you're right. You're making me a little more sympathetic in the moment. So thank you. Yeah.
Okay, so one thing I just want to say about this passage, I've been sitting here while you're thinking about. Okay, so look, what he's saying is capitalism is still accelerating, even though it has already realized novelties beyond any previous human imagining. Now, okay, when you think about the actually existing tech we have, I mean, I'm sorry, but the smartphones we hold make us goddamn gods compared to any other humans, any point in history saw what we can do with these little devices. We'd either be magicians or devils, or I don't know how they process this, just with our fucking smartphones. Um, and then you bring in, I mean, the infrastructure we have, the global communication technology. I mean, somebody can go, oh, well, we don't have bio enhancements and we don't have this. Yeah. It's so easy to just, it's, I mean, it's cliche to say this, but it's the fish swimming in water who can't perceive like, I'm sorry, the water we're swimming in is miraculous. Um, and it's easy to forget the level of technological innovation that capitalism has given us. And um, now, of course, here's the thing, right? You could say, well, the Soviet Union did some stuff. Yeah, I know. But modern industry, modern productivity has its source in industrial capitalism. And Land's sitting there going, like, it's already pulled off these incredible technological revolutions. And then you're sitting there saying it can't do anything when it already has. And then everything it's pulled off. I mean, traveling to the moon, the global communication network, um, technologies that we use in medicine, our scientific technology, all of this stuff. He's novelties beyond any previous human imagining. Now here's his jab at humans, right? After all, what is human imagination? It is a relatively paltry thing, merely a subproduct of the neural activity of a species of terrestrial primate. And it's true, he doesn't think highly of the human. I don't think it's this whole thing of like, oh, I just sit around like a evil maniacal overlord in a cartoon wanting humans to die. But he doesn't respect our level of intelligence or our level of experience. And he thinks this idea that we hold ourselves to like we're the crown of nature or something. He thinks that's laughable. He thinks that there's all kinds of forms of intelligence, artificial intelligence, that the difference between us and ants will be the difference between us and it, the singularity or whatever. And so he just doesn't see anything remarkable about us when viewed from this other outside perspective, I guess. And so, yeah, his anti-humanism is shining through right there. So as opposed to us with our intelligence, capitalism, in contrast, has no external limit. It has consumed life and biological intelligence. It's like life or biological intelligence, us, right? It's its host, right? It's consumed us, it's used us, but it is heading towards this new plane of intelligence vast beyond human anticipation. And now here's the thing, like, but the transcendental miserableist has an inalienable right to be bored, of course. So, which is to say, even though capitalism's pulling off all of this amazing shit with technology, the capitalist player hater is going to sit there and go, I don't care. None of that shit impresses me. Call this new, still nothing but change, which is to say, it's just still, things change, big deal. But his point is, yeah, but this is not just, this is revolutionary change in what technology is going to be able to do. And so, but the transcendental miserableist is going to be dissatisfied with anything capital does, is his point. What transcendental miserablism has no right to is the pretense of a positive thesis. So he's sitting there going, okay, fine, that's your default setting. Shit on capitalism. Boo-hoo about how it can't give you what you want, whatever. But here's what you don't have a right to do. You don't have a right to pretend that you have some sort of positive vision or positive thesis about what we're supposed to do. The Marxist dream of dynamism without competition is merely a dream, an old monotheistic dream restated. The wolf lying down with the lamb. This is his other way of saying you're not separating technological advancement from capital accumulation. If such a dream counts as imagination, then imagination is no more than a defect of the species. Packaging of tawdry contradictions as utopian fantasies, to be turned into reality in the service of a sterile negativity. Post-capitalism has no real meaning except an end to the engine of change. And that's this harsh thing. We would have to be, if we're going to reckon with this seriously, we have to say, how can we have this radical technological dynamism without capital accumulation? And his whole thing would be like, you just can't.
Challenge accepted.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? But
challenge accepted.
His thing is like, oh, I've just backed you into a corner. There's no way out of this corner. And that's where we and others like us would go, well, okay, challenge accepted. Because, yeah, that's the whole thing. Is like, are we supposed to just be, oh my God, yes, you've just proven to me it can't happen. This is his faith in capital. Like, capital is the only thing that can bring this dynamic change. Now, he's got history on his side. I give him that. But this is this other thing, like, because he views capital only in positive cybernetic terms, he thinks all it is more of the same, more of the same, more of the same, right? If you take a dialectical approach to it, you sit there and go, okay, more of the same, more to the same, to the point that it triggers its own inversion, right? And look, if there's a difference between Žižek and Land, it's going to be this difference between dialectics and cybernetics. And there are two different ways of viewing change. And you have them both sitting there. It's not as simple as Land just going, cybernetics is right, dialectics is bullshit. Žižek's going to have a rejoinder to that. So, but this is one of these things. Like, he would just say, cybernetics is right, dialectics is bullshit. And so, therefore, checkmate. And we're sitting there going, you haven't, no, that's not a checkmate to us. But it's certainly something we have to wrestle with. That's like that point is something we have to build a real robust response to. Okay, let's.
I've got some things. There's some things that have come together in the last year that have been sort of cooking for years, but they're not. I won't be releasing any of this for a while, but it's stuff that I think it takes on that challenge, and I think we're all doing it in our own ways, and so yeah. Anyway, that's when people are like, "Well, why Land?" Well, because it's like the stakes of the game are made more clear. We're able to think more clearly. There's clarity that comes
we've
from
read this
this.
essay together. I am. I
Yes,
think
Mikey.
this is a reading that I don't know how. You're not going to say to me, "Oh, this makes us more talk." Like,
we're still reading it. We're not done yet. But yes, you keep doing this, like acting like we're already. Isn't it great that we did this, guys?
Well, it is wrapping up, isn't it? We're near the last paragraph. This is not going to go for 6 more hours.
Yeah, we're on the last.
I don't believe you. I think it's going to go on forever.
Smart ass. I actually try to keep something.
I think we could just milk it for another.
Fucking guilt fest, you fucking super ego. Enjoy, doggy. Enjoy. Keep it fucking going. We're gonna do this all fucking night. You know what? I want to watch In the Mouth of Madness at some point tonight. Thank you. So I'm gonna wrap this up with this paragraph, and then I'm gonna watch the In the Mouth of Madness.
I don't even know what that is.
So it's going to fucking end quicker than you want, bub.
Do you want me to read it?
Yeah, go ahead.
Life continues, and capitalism does life in a way it has never done before. If that doesn't count as new, then the word new has been stripped down to a hollow denunciation. It needs to be reallocated to the sole thing that knows how to use it effectively, to the Shoggoth summoning regenerative anomalization of life, to the runaway becoming of such infinite plasticity that nature warps and dissolves before it, to the thing, to capitalism. And if that makes transcendental miserabilists unhappy, the simple truth of the matter is, anything would.
This is where he is. I mean, part of it is he is a damn good writer. We've always given him that credit. He has the upper hand when it comes to his way of words, at least with a lot of people on the left. So I give him his props. And yeah, I mean, this since don't you guys feel this that with certain leftist types, there is nothing that we could do to restructure or change society that would ever appease them.
Yeah, because they get their enjoyment from being dissatisfied.
Exactly. It's Todd's point. Yeah. They'd be bummed out by it. Actually, they'd be if you actually gave them what they demand. They would be disheartened because it would break apart their form of enjoyment, their jouissance, and they'd find it deflating. And so, I mean, look, I think he's right on that point. Just so you know, Dave, the Shoggoth, that's a Lovecraftian entity. So he's the Shoggoth summoning, the singularity summoning is what he's talking about.
I'm sure there's no way that the videos coming through on the live stream. For some reason, the one we did yesterday was just fine, but the one today, it has been the laggiest stream I've ever done on this channel.
Lemurs, dude.
It's these goddamn lemurs,
God
bro.
damn it, K-Tac.
It really is,
All
but
K-Tac's fault.
But I want you to all know that if you could see us right now, we all look really good in our own ways. We're all so attractive, and so you should obviously associate with us. No, but more importantly, I have this shirt. I turned on the camera just so you could all see it. It's got like dolphins and the sun, and it's like it's all positive and stuff, but it says "I'm dead inside," and I just thought it was fitting. But outside of that, guys, I think we should probably start wrapping it down. Closing thoughts. What do we want to say about this?
No time to go for 3 more hours.
Fuck it, dude. I'll do it. I don't give a shit.
So, I'm gonna be quick. Yes, I accept the epithet of being a transcendental miserabilist. I accept that. I am a transcendental miserabilist, and I think we can leverage that position usefully. And it actually brings me back to a conversation that I was having earlier today with Dave and Philip about satisfaction and dissatisfaction. And I think there's a way to use dissatisfaction to keep moving forward and to use it as like a type of resolve rather than just being complacent with your dissatisfaction or whatever. And I think it is a necessary position we have to take if we're currently dissatisfied with the left, but we're also committed to these human futures. And I think it describes us three and also some of the other people in the Theory Underground orbit, and probably in different ways, but I proudly wear it. Like, yeah, I am dissatisfied. Everything is bullshit, and that's why I give a shit. That's why I continue getting up in the morning, because I'm not satisfied. And I'm not going to settle for what's on offer. And if that necessitates us coming together in unconventional ways and using our own resources in the form of time, energy, and savings, and unique contributions and shit like that, if it takes us doing that until we're fucking exhausted, like, we'll do it or we'll die trying.
Breaking our backs in warehouses.
Yeah. And I think we can only fucking do that because we are necessarily dissatisfied. If we were willing to settle, we would fucking fail. So all these people who just say, no, organize harder, fuck off.
Or like when Xenogothic was like, oh, actually, there's nothing wrong with the left. The left has been succeeding. The left is doing great. All of the people who associate with anybody like Žižek is a neo-fascist. But Philip, I wanted to hear what you got, bro. What's up, man? I forgot that you were there because you weren't showing in the thing. So, but what's up, man? Welcome. Yeah, you've been here this whole time.
Yeah, it's been really good. Thank you. Is it possible that capital has already beaten itself off of the face of the earth, and we have entered this Varoufakianism, techno-feudalism, maybe a return of the repressed? What do you think Land would have to say just kind of about, capital being its own killer?
I think it's
Mikey. Oh. You're Mikey, you're muted. I muted you because your computer is for some reason not doing the echo thing properly. Like, it's supposed to cancel out echo, but for some reason I was hearing myself and then Philip coming back over your speaker.
How's it
but anyway,
now?
Well, when no one else is talking, you're fine.
Okay.
I didn't hear myself just now, but
sorry, Nance. Nance, you take it, and then I'll unmute.
No, just I think absolutely we're definitely moved into a new phase. I think And it's because capital, rather than capitalism, is the machine that's driving the whole system and shit like that. So
Right.
So taking it back to being a transcendental miserabilist, I blame capital for everything I don't like rather than capitalism. And that's how I escape the fucking self-defeating shit. And that's half joking. Of course, not everything I don't like is capital. But yes, capital has moved us into a new phase that we have been trying to figure out. We don't know, should we call it techno-feudalism? Should we call it neo-feudalism? Should we try to incorporate the idea of a caste society? We don't know, but I believe it is undeniable that we have reached a new stage.
100%.
So what I'll add is, Philip, this is what I mean. In week 3 of my course, it's going to be all about the Dark Enlightenment essay. And that's where Land is piggybacking off of the work of Mencius Moldbug, Curtis Yarvin, where Yarvin worked out a theory called the patchwork. And his vision of what he wants to happen is he wants there to be he basically thinks that capitalist corporations already run everything, but they don't run it formally, officially. He wants there to be basically a wiping away of liberal democracies, and corporations instead would own basically entire states, entire cities, and they would be ruled by a capitalist monarch. Now, it's not a monarch in the sense of, oh, it's appointed because of blood lineage. It would be appointed by a board of directors, but nonetheless, he wants a society built out of a patchwork of corporations. And so the point is, you would work, live, your everything in a space that is essentially your job. You would never leave where you're employed. And he thinks that this does away with all of the kind of bureaucratic hindrances that plague us right now. So the reason everything is stalled and we seem at a stalemate, we can't do anything, is our form of government. And if we abolish that and just let capital do its thing, and we have basically capitalist monarchs overseeing everything, for Yarvin, this produces a better society. Now, for us, it sounds like all we do is go from, I don't even want to say bad to worse. It's like we go from worse to worse, like worse to super worse. This idea that I never, like, I live and everything is my job. Like everything you do, as bad as having a job is, I mean, you do leave the fucking place and go home. But the point is, your house wouldn't be your house. Not for real. You would be living under, and this is where I go, is this patchwork thing close to what is it Varoufakis who is doing the techno-feudalism or neo-feudalism thing? I'm wondering how close these two are, actually. I wonder what Yarvin / Land would say to Jody Dean and Giannis Varoufakis, who are the two I think are primarily developing this. Yeah.
Michel Luc Belmer is another one, but they would agree on the conditions, and Varoufakis and co would say it's bad. Moldbug and co would say it's good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, but here's the thing. This is where Moldbug would never want to fully identify with Land. Moldbug would say it's good because it's actually good for human beings. That human beings don't actually desire freedom in this liberal democratic sense. They desire security, regularity, stability, etc. Right? And he thinks that living in these capitalist, corporate, state things would actually ensure that better than traditional liberal democracies. Land, on the other hand, wants the patchwork to take hold for the emancipation of capital itself, not for human beings. He doesn't care about human beings. He doesn't care how we, like, our status or our sense of well-being, or it doesn't matter to him. What matters to him is the liberation of capital becoming the techno-capital singularity. And he sees this form of radical. I mean, it's like ultra libertarianism. There are certain libertarians that wouldn't want libertarianism associated with this at all, but it's the libertarianism of capital or of wild matter, so to speak. It gets into this whole other aspect of Land's work, but Land wants it precisely because this, if we accelerate capital, we accelerate towards human extinction. And this is basically kind of a desired end for him, which nobody who's a conservative, libertarian, etc., would affirm this, right? This is this weird thing with him. Like, he's on the right, but no rightist that I have ever talked to would ever embrace the fact that he wants capital to do what it does precisely to bring about human extinction. And so this, again, he thought himself to a very singular position. That being said, I think there's going to be ways of connecting this techno-feudalism or neo-feudalism concept to the patchwork. And hopefully in the week 3 of the course, we'll make some headway there.
Yeah, I was just saying in the chat, it is a form of, I mean, it's pretty similar to what we have now. It's a lot more neo-feudal than what we have now. Because the one thing you can say about, a government that has to put on a show of pretending to be democratic, it slows things down, right? In a certain, there's a lot of things that can't just happen. But things could happen, and there could be radical changes overnight if capital didn't have to deal with
States.
these other, government debates, any kind of pretending that there's such a thing as like what the consent of the governed, right? Because
there'd be no
there's
elections.
There's customers. There's customers. There's workers, and then there's people who are between and locked outside of these spaces, and whether those people get exterminated or put in camps, or they're just left out to wander deserts or whatever. Who knows? Who fucking knows?
Big issue,
but
right?
like that's the kind of idea. I've met libertarians who believe that, like, yeah, well, everyone should be able to, basically choose their government the way you choose a corporation, to, like, you choose a brand, and if you don't like it, then you go to another one. And the thing is, like, well, what if there's not another one? Oh, well, you go make your own. Oh, well, what if you don't have the means to make your own? What if you don't have another space from which to
Then
make
head to
your
the
own?
bridge.
Like,
Head to the bridge.
and so head to the bridge, and I think that is an important kind of contrast, and bringing it into conversation with Varoufakis. Look, he's been talking about it on YouTube, but we tried to find the book where he really talks about it because we couldn't find
It just
any
released.
real book where he's actually explicitly. Did it really just release?
Yeah,
September-
I think it's a new book.
For real?
September 28th. So I have I have the Bellmare book, and I'm waiting for the Varoufakis book, and we'll do something on that for sure.
Yeah, we'll do something on that for sure. I mean, there is another book by Joel Kopkin on neo-feudalism. He wrote the book on it before Varoufakis did. No one references it because he's not a leftist. And so the thing is people have been talking about this idea for 100 years. And if you listen to the 24-hour live stream I did with Nance on Heidegger and Ruins, then you'll know that Heidegger also holds this position that Yarvin does, except that it's not capitalist. Like, for him, the problem with the Soviet, the USSR, was that this was still capitalism. This was worker-controlled capitalism instead of capitalist-controlled capitalism. And then the way that we would say that now is that it's capital without capitalists. And the way that Burnham talks about that is the managerial revolution. Most people who are in positions of what we would consider capitalist or bourgeoisie are actually I'm sorry. No, they are holding positions within a system, and this has nothing to do with their entrepreneurship. This has very little to do with almost anything. Like someone like Trump gets okay, he's a capitalist, but what kind of capitalist is he? He's nothing like Henry Ford. He's nothing like Rockefeller. He's nothing like these guys. This is he is basically just a PMC dude who has major ownership stake. The thing is like a lot of the people who control the system don't have any ownership over it, but they control it immensely and they get prestige from doing so. The political class, media class, they are a part of this, right? So is the entire academic system. This is what we're trying to get to with the PMC, but like Gore's is a good response to all of this critique of transcendental miserablism. And I think the stuff that we do with him, people are going to see. It'll speak for itself. So look, most of you all will not get the memo until years from now, and you'll realize you were wasting your time barking up trees. But there'll be a handful of people who get it within the week because we read the whole book aloud and talked it through, and that's going to go up on the channel in the next day or two. And so that's only going to be beneficial in the immediate for people who are working and able to listen. Or if you're, say, on the weekend and you're gaming, or if you are laid off, unemployed, and gaming, or if you're multitasking in some other way, you could go with us through the whole thing. I think it's like 7 or 8 hours. It's amazing. It's transformative. If you want a video essay version of it that's all polished and shit, you'll probably have to wait a decade before any of the video essayists out there actually do something on it. But, you know, hey, you've got two options. One is like read the book for yourself. The other is listen to us reading it. Or that's one option. Somehow get it. Somehow read the disappearance. Sorry, is it? No, Farewell to the Working Class, which is a translation. The real title is Farewell to the Proletariat, but the translation is Farewell to the Working Class. And Andre Gores is dealing with the fact that this post-Taylorized, post-industrial society that we live in is no longer one that Marxism can even engage with. It cannot engage with it seriously because many of its categories are just based off of pre-Taylorism. And Taylorism was a direct response to working class organizing, and ever since, the left has been dead. And so there are people who are post-old left because the old left being kept alive when its categories don't touch reality. They get called new left, and some of them really are new left because they're students for democratic society types, but, you know, typical American radicals. But someone like Gores is on this other wavelength, and so in the debate or conversation, it's not a real debate. It was a real conversation, I felt like, with Daniel Tutt that Nance and I had just yesterday, the day before yesterday. It's really a clash between these two positions, and I'm saying that Gores, it just stands also as a good response to this Landian critique of transcendental miserablism, and so I know some of you will get the memo very soon, and so I'm very excited for you who will get it. I think you'll all be jacked on this. Like, I could see if I was listening to this channel and working at Amazon, as I will be in a week from now, actually, because I used to work there and I'll be working there again shortly, then I would be excited because I would know that at least 1 or 2 days I would be binging this exegetical B-side that I did with Nance. It's not a B-side, I guess, if it's public on the channel. So this one's not a real B-side. The B-sides are like the Heidegger Ruins, the 30-hour live stream. Like that's a, no, is it 20? I don't know how many hours it is, but whatever. That's a B-side because that's not public facing. And so you just got to direct message us if you're interested in listening to that as well. But we do these long form things for people who are obsessives, who want to be able to follow a long chain of thought, who want to be able to stretch the boundaries of their comprehension, not just their reading comprehension, also their listening comprehension, and ultimately their thinking capacities, right? You're stretching the boundaries of that. You're stretching the limitations on those capacities. And so if you're that kind of person who's like us, developing through listening and reading, it's not an either or, then you should be thoroughly stoked about what's coming very soon to the channel. And if you really don't want to wait for it to come out on this channel, you can just go straight to Nance's channel. He'll link it in the description, and make sure to subscribe to him because he's only got like 50 subscribers. But that, yeah, he's already posted it all to his account. I'll be posting it in a day or two, like I said. Anyway, so that's my big segue. I think that's when I say it's a good response to all of this, I'm not saying that it absolves transcendental miserablism of its shortcomings. I'm saying that Gores is a good example of someone who is also critical of it, but comes from a different position, and he has different goals. And I like a lot of the tools he develops for thinking about ways of carving up the horizon of possibilities we are moving into and or projecting, right? So get Gores pilled with us. Mikey's the one who really got us going on him this year. He was on my radar, and I'd even had a couple of his books, but I just hadn't actually engaged with him. And like, Mikey, you really put me onto him. So,
man, I discovered him just on a fluke. I was searching for any thinker that I considered to be like-minded when it comes to how we think about time, energy, and wage labor. And he was, I knew about Cernacek and Williams. I knew about, what is it, Paul LaForge? Is that right? There are thinkers who have been aligned to this way of thinking, but he's obviously the one that I think is the most systematic so far. I mean, he wrote so many books about it, but yeah, I got to give you guys credit because so far I haven't read nearly as much Gores as you guys have. So you're the ones really doing the work and getting the ideas out there. So applaud you guys for that.
The Gores heads.
I have to say, this always warms my heart when Sid Nanda wrote Baudrillard in Boise, fucking Idaho. And I get some of you new viewers, you're not going to get the reference, but it just, I love Bert. Like that's classic.
Yeah, I am excited to catch up with him. He's never able to do stuff. He's always either researching what he's interested in, and it's just not what I'm doing at the moment, or he's dealing with a bunch of bullshit. And so, like right now, he's dealing with a bunch of bullshit.
All right, so I just want to add straightforward because I was building.
Thoughts and prayers to Bert.
Yeah. Okay, so just so I know, what do you two think of this essay in general?
We already said what we think, but I would also add
like a general impression of. I mean, you appreciate anything he said? Like, you grant him any insights into things here?
I think it's an astute critique of the tendencies on the left. But I think he's wrong. Because I think he has his own commitments. So similarly to how the left is blinded by their commitments, I think he's blinded by his own commitments. And I think taking on his critique actually frees us up to move beyond those old commitments, those old dead ends and old failures.
Because here's, I guess the reason I asked this question for both of you is, okay, it seems like he gives us two options: be a transcendental miserableist or be a transcendental joyist, which involves just radically affirming capital. And the idea that we have to choose between these two options doesn't seem sufficient, nor does it seem proven. Like, I'm not convinced that these are our two options here.
They're not, because rather than being complacent miserableists, we have to be resolute. I don't know, something else, but like we We take on this miserablism, but we use it as fuel rather than as a reason to just jack off all day, or just go on Twitter and tweet, or just eat fucking ice cream.
Other left us alive.
Yeah. That becomes an excuse for so many people, and they're internalizing it, whereas we're not really internalizing it. We're like accepting it and taking it on, and maybe I don't know, maybe we're sublating it into something else.
Reckoning with it.
Yeah, we're tarrying with it.
Reckoning with it.
Mikey, could you say really quick what that really? I know we get it from Hegel. I know Žižek talks about it, but just like for the listener, what do you mean by tarrying with the negative?
It means like I'm not rushing past it. I'm not brushing it off, or I'm really dwelling with the problem. I'm really dwelling with the contradiction, and I'm living with it. I'm absorbed with it. I'm trying to view it from as many different angles as I can. I'm trying to think through the various consequences of each of the positions in the contradiction. I'm not rushing past it as if there's a simple solution, or trying to dismiss it as a problem in the first place. Like it's dwelling in the conflict that you're facing. And it doesn't mean you stay there forever. It doesn't. You are trying to find a solution in a way, but it's taking it seriously, and which is to say, dealing with the contradiction or the problem with as much nuance as you can.
I like that. I think that's what I mean by it. The negative is death. The negative is destruction. The negative is contradiction. The negative is antagonism. It's, you go down the list on and on and on. It's also that which is not present, and that which may not be apparent. I just realized there's a dick and balls on the cover of Fanged Numina.
Yeah.
You guys know that?
Right,
it's
under
like
the eyeball.
It's being carried by that alien. Damn. I never noticed
that. As far as I understand it, I mentioned the Chapman brothers, the art duo, that they always collaborate. As far as I understand it, this is one of their paintings.
Dope. Well, everybody, I think with that, though, we're going to close this thing out. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, Nance. Thank you, Philip. Thank you, Mikey. Thank you, Sidnanda, and everybody else who's been watching today, and also who will be watching in the near future. To the people who watched it live and had to deal with the buffering, our apologies. To the people who don't have to deal with that problem, congratulations. You got out of it. You didn't even have to deal with it. Fucking A. So with that, we're going to close it out. Hope you all have a lovely rest of your whatever. Peace.
Peace.